Chapter 27. I'm not leaving. The necromancer spies on this room every night. If I suddenly disappear, he'll find out immediately. Do you think I can't tell that you're sacrificing yourself? Serena held the boy's hand tightly, and her charming eyes were covered with a layer of mist. Seeing that the situation was becoming more and more like a melodramatic drama, Andre couldn't help but laugh. He gently kissed the female knight's lips and explained, "All right, it seems that I didn't make it clear and caused some misunderstanding. Actually, Ulysses has been spying on me all this time, so when you leave, I won't return to this room to rest, and he'll never know that you've disappeared. Do you understand now? Oh my God, why didn't I think of that? You stay here and stall that damn old bastard, and I'll go back to get reinforcements. This plan is perfect." Serena hugged the boy's waist tightly and shouted excitedly. She could almost see Ulysses being surrounded by the kingdom's army, and then being trampled into meat paste by the feudal knights. "Lower your voice. Be careful these 2 days, and don't give yourself away. I'm leaving." Andre hugged the female knight and pushed open the door to leave his safe haven. After such a long time together, he was now more and more certain that Ulysses had never trusted him. For a whole month and a half, or even 2, the necromancer didn't give him a single scroll. But today was different. According to his promise, Andre had discovered a stabilizer, so he could immediately obtain 2 new level 0 arcane scrolls. With anticipation for the new spells, he quickened his steps and soon arrived at the alchemy room. Ulysses was now concentrating on mixing the potion. He carefully poured a bottle of red liquid with a pungent smell into the brown potion, and then a strong white light appeared in the bottle. The next second, boom! A strong explosion swept through the entire alchemy room, and many bottles and jars were shattered. Some even fell from the shelves and smashed into pieces. But even such a terrifying explosion didn't cause any damage to the necromancer who was in the center. He only sniffed the potion stuck on his hand and sighed. "It seems that I'm still too impatient." "Instructor, you didn't double the concentration of the stabilizer, did you?" Andre, who had witnessed the entire process, hurried forward to greet him. Even though he was eager to see him die, he still expressed his concern. "Double?" Ulysses laughed dryly and shook his head. "I increased the concentration of the stabilizer by 5 times. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been such a violent reaction. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. You should be here to receive your reward, right? Tell me, which 2 level 0 spells do you want to learn? As the saying goes, life is like a play, and everything depends on acting skills." The 2 powerful actors both showed a very professional level and did not reveal their inner thoughts at all. Those who did not know would think that they were a teacher and an apprentice who had a very close relationship. Tremor, shock, and stun. "I wish to obtain these 2 spell scrolls." Andre, who had come prepared, didn't hesitate and directly reported his name. As the name implied, the first spell scroll could shoot a beam of electric energy and cause a violent shock to a target not far away. If the target's body was not strong enough, it would be very likely that the target would be killed directly. The second spell scroll could create a spiritual shock through the power of arcane magic and cause the target's brain to enter into a state of dizziness, making it impossible for the target to attack or defend. It could be said that these 2 spells were closely related to his future plans, so when he reported his name, he immediately began to feel nervous. He was afraid that he would be rejected. Fortunately, Ulysses seemed to be in a good mood today. Without asking any questions, he took out 2 scrolls from the small wooden box on his waist and handed them to the young man. "Take them. Your efforts during this period of time are completely worthy of this reward. Also, I'm going out for a while, so you continue to look for new stabilizers. I hope to hear some good news when I come back." "Of course, instructor. Don't worry, I promise that when you come back, there will be a big surprise." After saying that, Andre put one hand on his chest and bowed deeply. Although he was very excited when he heard that the necromancer was going out, he did not show it on his face. He was still very respectful, as if this matter was not important to him. Seeing the young man's calm expression, Ulysses nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. If this surprise is real, then I promise to give you a surprise too." "There's no need for a surprise. If it's convenient, please bring back some daily necessities. You know, I've been eating roasted meat since the day I became your apprentice, and now I'm about to throw up." Andre purposely put on a bitter smile and complained. "Ha ha. All right, I forgot that you're not a real necromancer yet. You haven't learned how to use negative energy to sustain yourself. Don't worry, I'll remember to bring back a chef. After all, you're my only apprentice and assistant." After saying this meaningful sentence, Ulysses laughed loudly and left the alchemy room. He did not notice that when he passed by the young man, some light yellow and white powder sprinkled on his dirty black robe. Then, he swaggered and disappeared at the end of the passage. Seeing that his little trick was not discovered, Andre's face showed a trace of a cold smile. He squinted his eyes and muttered to himself, "Let's go. Let's go quickly. As soon as you leave this place, I'll be able to find the exit immediately. After Serena is safe, I'll wholeheartedly prepare a big gift for you." After saying that, he opened the scroll and began to learn the 2 new arcane spells recorded on it. Soon, he forgot everything and entered a state of concentration. For a transmigrator without any supernatural powers, the power of magic was so mysterious and vast that he was unknowingly intoxicated by it. Especially those complicated incantations, hand gestures, and the extremely difficult to recognize symbols copied on the parchment. It was unconsciously intoxicating and hard to extricate oneself from it. Because he had successfully learned a true rank 1 arcane spell, these rank 0 arcane spells were not difficult in Andre's eyes. After all, rank 0 arcane spells were also known as cantrips. Generally speaking, they were not very powerful and were used by acolytes to familiarize themselves with the basic movements of casting spells. At the same time, they could also train their own magic power. However, in order to prevent the necromancer from spying on him, he deliberately pretended that he was struggling and silently stared at the scroll with furrowed brows. Chapter 28. An hour or two later, Andre, who had finished copying the new arcana technique, came straight to the front hall. He immediately discovered that the place was empty. Not only were there no screams or cries of agony, even Ulysses himself had disappeared. The crystal ball that was used to spy on his privacy was placed on the table, covered with a dirty black cloth. Gone? Really gone? Andre suppressed the excitement and ecstasy in his heart. He hurriedly ran back to the passage and took out a torch. He began to swing it around the room. Not long after, some small flames suddenly appeared on ground. They were extinguished as soon as they were lit. Following these extremely weak flames, he finally came to the front of a stone wall. Judging from the knocking sounds, the wall should be empty. This meant that there was an entrance to the outside hidden behind the wall. Awesome. My preparations were not in vain. He waved his fist fiercely and shouted excitedly. In fact, the white powder that he had secretly sprinkled on Ulysses was white phosphorus. Andre had found it in a bottle in the alchemy room. This special substance could not only produce fluorescent light in the dark, but would also spontaneously combust as long as the temperature exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. It was perfect for finding an exit. However, as someone who had lived in dangerous environments for a long time, he did not immediately start looking for possible traps around the wall. Instead, he touched the eye-shaped tattoo on his hand and opened the system to level up his profession. After all, there might be traps and guards behind the wall, so he had to be fully prepared. Are you sure you want to allocate 1,000 EXP to the mage profession? Yes. Congratulations. Your mage profession has reached level 2. Name: Andrew race, human alignment, neutral, good profession, mage level 2 EXP required to level up. 1,000/3,000 memorizable arcane spells. Level 0 for level 1. 3 currently mastered arcane spells. Level 0. Mage Hand, Reading Magic, Illumination, Repair, Secret Imprint, Magic Trick, Tremor, Stun level 1. Prismatic Spray HP. 5 of 8. Injured and severely malnourished. EXP. 745. Undistributed. Ability points. 0 attribute points. 0 mastered abilities. Beginner potioneering, magic item crafting, scroll copying, summon. Magic pet upgrade complete. Please choose a creature from the list below as your magical pet. Bats, common nocturnal animals. They can locate targets with ultrasonic waves and are almost impossible to hurt by physical attacks. After becoming a magic pet, they can let out an ear-piercing scream to hurt the enemy. Eye of the Pearl. They're a close relative of the beholder. They can shoot all kinds of strange magic rays through their eyes and also have the supernatural ability to fly. Fairy dragon. A small dragon that likes to be mischievous. It has very good spell-like abilities. If you can tolerate their mischief and sense of humor, then these little guys will be good helpers. Pseudo-dragon. Looks like a mini version of the little red dragon. Hard scales, sharp teeth and horns, as well as a tail with poisonous spikes. Anyone who isn't strong enough will fall into a coma after being stabbed. When they reach adulthood, they can even spit fire. Pico fairy. Little elves with wings. They are light and dexterous. They are born to be good at scouting, unlocking, and discovering and disarming traps. Hellhound, a large canine creature from the bottomless abyss, is very aggressive. It can spit cone-shaped flames from its mouth. It is very loyal to its master. Fire demon bat, a cunning creature from the elemental plane. The flame arrows they shoot are very destructive. Ice demon bat, also a creature from the elemental plane, is the opposite of the fire demon bat. The ice arrows it shoots are just as scary. Little devil, an evil creature from hell, is good at stealth sneak attacks and using poison. Is a good helper for evil spellcasters. Black panther, a terrifying hunter hiding in the dark. It is almost impossible to find it before it attacks. Raven, a very smart bird. Although it is not very beautiful, it can gain the ability to speak after becoming a magical pet. Maybe it is good to have a pet to chat with on the journey. Looking at the long list of information that popped up in his retina, Andre was dazzled for a moment. Especially the part about magical pets, he was at a loss. Because other than the bats, ravens, and Black Panther that he had some understanding of on Earth, he had never seen the rest of them. At most, he had read some small amount of information from the library. He did not know which one to choose at all. Of course, if only based on the description given by the system, Pico Fairy was obviously the first choice in the current environment. Secondly, the Eye of the Pearl that could fly was not bad. Its powerful magic ray could make up for his lack of attack power. And the pseudo-dragon with strong scales was also not bad. At least it could protect him at a critical moment. Andre, who was in a dilemma, frowned and cursed in a low voice. Damn it. What should I choose? Forget it. I'll just toss a coin to decide. The Eye of the Pearl on the head and the Pico Fairy on the tail. If it stands up, I'll choose the pseudo-dragon. After making the decision, he quickly took out a small Kalani gold coin from his pocket and flicked it with his thumb. The golden light rolled in an arc and fell directly on the table, spinning rapidly. It didn't take long for the result to be shown. Heads. All right, then I'll choose the Eye of the Pearl. After saying that, Andre did not hesitate to make the choice. New information immediately appeared on his retina. Magical pet confirmed. Eye of the Pearl. You have obtained the ability to summon a magical pet. Can be summoned through a standard casting action, and can also be unsummoned through a standard casting action. This ability can only be used once per day. Name, pending, race, Eye of the Pearl, magical creature, alignment, neutral evil profession. Magical pet level 2, the level of this creature increases with the level of its master mage. Strength, 6 agility, 16 vitality, 9 intelligence, 6 perceptive sense, 10 charm, 12 health points. 13, healthy, special ability, cold ray. The Eye of the Pearl can shoot a cold ray, causing great damage to the target. There's also a certain chance of freezing the target in place. Currently can be used 12 times per day. Immune to charm, spells innate magic resistance, flying mastered abilities. Alertness. Due to its particularly developed vision, this creature has a certain chance of discovering enemies hidden in the dark in advance. Looking at the long list of abilities of the magical pet, Andre immediately could not wait to summon it. According to the information that suddenly appeared in his brain, he accurately completed the standard casting action. Chapter 29. Instantly, A circular complex pattern appeared on the ground, followed by a dazzling, colorful light. A few seconds later, a meatball with a mouth full of sharp teeth, a huge main eye, and 4 tentacle-like eye stalks appeared in place. As soon as it appeared, it looked around curiously, then flew straight to its master's shoulder and rubbed affectionately, like a spoiled child. "Okay, stop it." Andre gently poked the magic pet on his shoulder. He now understood the meaning of the phrase, "A magic pet is a part of a mage." It was an indescribable feeling. As long as he wanted to, he could immediately control the body of the Eye of Pearl and even use its natural ability. There was no need to talk at all. The thoughts of the mage and the magic pet were already connected, and they could feel each other's thoughts anytime and anywhere. Oh, the Eye of Pearl let out a series of messy cries. Although others might not even understand a single syllable, Andre instantly understood its meaning and nodded with a smile. "I know. Your name is Little Eye. Now be quiet. I'm going to start working." After that, he no longer paid attention to the magic pet that was curious about everything and looked around the wall for possible mechanisms. In fact, with the Eye of Pearl's pitiful 6 points of intelligence, it could not communicate normally. According to the human label, it was at most about the same as a child about 10 to 12 years old. Suddenly, Little Eye seemed to have found something, and a white beam of light shot out from one of its stalks, directly hitting the glowing crystal above its head. "Damn it! Come down. Don't use your ability carelessly." Andre hurriedly shouted at the magic pet. Little Eye seemed a little unconvinced and let out a few strange cries. "Oh, what? You said that's the mechanism?" Andre's face immediately showed a trace of surprise, and hurriedly chanted a spell, using Mage's hand to try to press the crystal. As a result, only a bang was heard, and the crystal sank into the ceiling. Rumble. The wall that was found to be problematic slowly rose, revealing a tunnel that led to the outside world. Excitement, anticipation, excitement, and a little fear. It could be said that Andre's current emotions were a little complicated. However, as the wall rose completely, a ray of light appeared, and he couldn't help but tremble. He resisted the urge to escape immediately and began to explore carefully with his magic pet. For an old monster with a twisted mind like Ulysses, no matter how cautious he was, it was not excessive. With the bright light in front of him as a reference, he could easily analyze his current location, especially that white world. He was definitely in a cave somewhere in the frozen wasteland, and, judging from his surrounding temperature, he should not be far from where the cavalry was attacked. This was because Andre had heard from the elders of Lonely Mountain Town that it would never snow in the depths of the frozen wasteland. There were only huge blocks of ice that never melted, and there was not a single cloud in the sky. Once an ordinary person set foot there, there was no possibility of returning alive. It was clear that although the temperature was very low, it was not enough to freeze people to death. Furthermore, it was snowing heavily outside, so he deduced that they should not be too far away from the Black Forest. Of course, all of this could only be confirmed when he walked out of the tunnel and saw the outside world. Stepping on the hard, frozen ground, Andre slowly walked forward while puffing white smoke from his mouth. The magic pet, Little Eyes, followed behind him. Although there was an unhealthy blush on its face, it still gritted its teeth and persevered. He didn't know exactly how low the temperature was, but he could clearly feel that the tattered robe he was wearing was no longer able to keep him warm. The heat in his body was being drained at an extremely fast rate. Perhaps he would only be able to hold on for 20 minutes at most before he was completely frozen. This also meant that he had to explore this path in a very short time, and then return to the warm depths of the cave. He had to send Serena away as soon as possible while Ulysses was not around. Just as he was distracted, he seemed to have stepped on some mechanism under his feet. The entire tunnel trembled violently, and a loud sound came from a wall in front of him. Then it collapsed completely, revealing another fork in the road. Dong, 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 dong. Heavy footsteps came from the fork in the road. Judging from the slight shaking of the ground, it was definitely a big guy that weighed more than 2 tons. Damn it, I knew this old fellow would definitely set up some traps. Andre cursed softly as he took a few steps back and prepared for battle. Although he did not have the javelins, spears, and bows that he used to hunt, nor did he have any traps that he set up in advance, he was not afraid at all. This was because the power of the arcane art was flowing in his body. Moreover, he also had a small eye that could shoot frost rays. No matter how he looked at it, he was much stronger than he was a few months ago. However, this confidence did not last long. When a huge monster that was more than 4 meters tall and walked upright appeared in the tunnel, Andre's eyes almost fell to the ground. He swallowed his saliva subconsciously and muttered to himself, "Oh, it can't be. Ulysses, that old fart, actually left me such a big gift." Roar! The monster with long white hair that looked a little like a hybrid of a snow bear and a gorilla beat its chest and roared angrily. It had the head of a bear and the upper limbs and chest muscles of a gorilla. Its huge claws glowed with a black light, and one could tell at a glance that they were very sharp. Perhaps it would only take a single swipe to rip open a person's stomach. Run! Run! Andre had almost no hesitation. He called for his magical pet to turn around and run wildly towards the underground palace. He did not want to test whether his arcane art would work on this huge monster in front of him at all. After all, confidence did not equate to arrogance, especially in a situation where the difference in strength was very obvious. Running away was the smartest choice. Roar! Roar! Seeing that its prey was running away, the huge monster roared again and began to chase after it on all fours. It had been proven many times that 2 legs would never be able to outrun 4 legs. Moreover, a large body meant a large stride. In a short while, the distance between the hunter and the prey had been shortened to less than 10 meters. Seeing that it was not very likely that he could escape safely into the underground entrance, Andre gritted his teeth and went all out. He shouted at his magical pet, "Eyes! Attack its eyes!" After receiving its master's order, the eyeball immediately stopped running. It turned around and shot out a beam of white frost from one of its small eyes, accurately hitting the monster's right eye. Chapter 30. Get rid of its other eye. Andre gave his pet another order when he heard the noise behind him. The exhausted little eye forced itself to stay alert and used all its strength to shoot out the last frost ray. Roar! Roar, roar, roar! Andre knew that the monster was completely blind when it let out another roar of anger and pain. He sped up and leaped into the tunnel that was revealed by the collapse. As soon as he stepped in, he felt a huge monster rush past him from behind. The mad beast did not stop like last time. It rushed forward with all its might, not knowing that there was a deadly trap in front of it. The ice surface at the exit was as smooth as a mirror, and the strong inertia threw it out. Then came a roar that sounded like it was rolling down a mountain. The trap he designed made the synthetic beast roll down the cliff, dealing 80 points of damage. The target's cervical vertebra is broken. It is dead. You have received 1200 EXP. Congratulations! You have relied on the power of arcane magic to defeat a powerful monster. You are rewarded with 2 level 1 arcane scrolls. You have received 1 mage's armor and 1 grease scroll each. When the last message was displayed, Andre found that there were 2 soft parchment scrolls in his hands, just like last time. He carefully put the scrolls away and took a deep breath. He smiled bitterly and said to himself, "Well, at least there is some compensation. It was really dangerous just now. Fortunately, this guy's intelligence is not high. If it was the cunning winter wolf, I'm afraid I would be dead now. It seems that no matter how much power you have, if you don't have the intelligence to match it, you will die in someone's trap sooner or later. It's a pity that the EXP is a little more. Then I can level up to level 3 as a mage." As the best hunter in Lonely Mountain Town, he had long trained a pair of sharp eyes. He only needed to look at the surroundings to know where to dig a hole and where to set up an ambush. In the battle, just now, he had made the best use of the environment. First, he used the magic pet's 2 cold rays to blind the opponent. Then, he set up an ice surface at the entrance of the cave and used himself as bait to make the giant beast, which only had brute strength, roll down the cliff and break its neck. In fact, according to the records in the book, mages were unable to master powerful arcane spells before level 5. Therefore, tactics and timing were especially important, especially when fighting against large monsters. As for killing humans, it was much simpler. Even the lowest level of level 0 arcane spells could have a considerable effect. If you had a few warrior companions, their fighting power would not be as simple as one. Staggering to the exit, Andre poked half of his body out and looked down. He saw that the mountain below was covered in white snow and was very steep with strange rocks. He could not help but sigh. All right, it's just as I thought. It's really on a lonely mountain in the frozen wastelands. Although it's a little steep, it's not to the extent that it's impossible to climb. It's just that the wind is a little strong. After confirming the terrain and location, he directly drove the listless little eyes into the alchemy room. He went straight to the resting area, intending to let Serena prepare to escape as soon as possible. Since Ulysses had already left, Andre did not have the slightest scruple. He rushed into the room and gave the female knight a warm hug, shouting, "Serena, that old monster is gone. You're going to be free soon." "What? Is this true?" Serena's whole body was trembling slightly, and tears began to flow out uncontrollably. After living in fear for so long, she could hear the screams echoing in the passage every day. Recalling the miserable state of her friends and subordinates before they died, she was about to go crazy. Now that she heard the word freedom, she instantly lost control of her emotions. Andre gently patted the female knight's back and comforted her. "All right, don't cry. Listen, we don't have much time. Come with me to the warehouse to get some necessities and rope. Then we'll leave immediately. I don't know when Ulysses will return, so you have to step into the Black Forest before he enters the frozen wastelands. Otherwise, you won't be able to hide in this endless plain." Serena knew that this was not the time for romance. She quickly wiped her tears and nodded. "Understood. I need a set of armor, a long sword, some jerky, a pair of warm boots, a water bottle, and finally, the right direction. Come with me. There should be all these things in the warehouse." Andre held the female knight's hand and walked towards the warehouse. He knew that most of the captive's belongings were kept there by the necromancers. Only a few gems, gold and silver jewelry would be taken away by the necromancers. After more than 10 minutes, Serena finally found everything she needed. She looked like she had walked out of the shadows in her armor and regained her confidence and pride. Her long blonde hair fluttered in the wind from outside, looking beautiful and valiant. Looking at the female knight who had been with him day and night for nearly 2 months, Andre suddenly felt a little reluctant. He knew that this separation might be permanent. There was no doubt that Ulysses was powerful, and the possibility of him escaping death was not more than 5%, or even lower. Standing at the entrance of the cave, Serena looked at the snowy world outside and looked into the young man's eyes. She asked softly, "Are you really not going to leave with me? You know that I can't leave. Otherwise, neither of us will be able to escape. Let's go quickly. The snow can cover all traces. Seize this opportunity and try to go as far as possible. Don't worry, I can take care of myself." "Have you forgotten how I deceived Ulysses these days?" Andre pretended to smile calmly. In fact, he already had a perfect plan. He planned to use the chemicals in the alchemy room and the warehouse to make 2 powerful mixed bombs. When the necromancer came back, he would be directly sent to the sky. Even if he did not die from the explosion, he would be able to severely injure him. At that time, he would personally take revenge. Of course, if he failed, then he would ignite the other bomb and rush forward to die together with the necromancer. Anyway, he would definitely end up in a miserable state if he failed, so he might as well choose to die with a bang. Chapter 31. Ever since he killed that monster, Andre knew that he couldn't continue pretending. After all, a large part of the cave had collapsed, and anyone who wasn't blind could see it. Instead of waiting for Ulysses to finish him off, it was better to strike first and gain the upper hand. At the very least, he could firmly grasp the initiative in his hands. Even if he failed, he still had the right to commit suicide. Because he had seen too many humans being tortured by necromancers, he didn't want to be one of them. As the saying goes, when a person disregarded life and death, he would have a unique aura. Andre seemed to have calmed down in an instant. His eyes were as calm as a lake without any ripples. Serena acutely sensed this change and thought that the young man already had a complete plan. Therefore, she kissed his cheek and said softly, "Be careful. I'll be back with reinforcements very soon." Thank you, but this feeling is a little strange. You have to know that in most of the stories, it's a handsome knight rescuing a beautiful princess, but now Andre deliberately put on a crying face and joked. He hated the sadness of parting, so he wanted to change the topic. Serena couldn't help but laugh. It's okay. You're my beloved princess. Wait here obediently. I'll be back to save you soon." After saying that, she grabbed the rope and jumped down, quickly disappearing into the vast snow. With the skills of a feudal knight, he didn't need to be as careful as a normal person. As long as there was a place for him to borrow strength, he could easily jump and climb between cliffs. Andre stood at the entrance of the cave for 7 to 8 minutes until the tight rope suddenly loosened. He knew that this was the signal that the female knight had landed safely, so he immediately put away the rope and went back underground. In order to create a powerful explosion, Andre spent the next few days in the alchemy room without sleeping or resting. He sorted out almost all the chemicals that could cause a violent reaction. Then, according to the chemistry knowledge that he had learned in his previous life, he made a big bomb that was mixed with nitroglycerin, black gunpowder, white phosphorus, alcohol, and many other combustible substances. In order to increase the power of the bomb, he even mixed some iron pieces that had been dipped in poison. He put all of them together in a huge wooden barrel and buried it right under the examination table. As for the smaller one, he carried it with him in an iron box. If the first step didn't work, he would have to play the game himself and perish together with the enemy. In addition, he also took some time to learn mage armor and grease and copied them into scrolls. These 2-level, 1 arcana spells were very useful. The former could create a layer of invisible force field, like a layer of armor, to block external weapons and arrows. It also lasted for a long time, 1 hour for a level 1 sorcerer, 2 hours for a level 2 sorcerer, and so on. The latter was a control spell. It could release a large amount of grease to cover the ground in front of him. People walking on it would easily slip and fall. If a fire was lit, it could instantly cause heavy damage to a large number of enemies. It was very practical. Maybe it was because his spell casting level had increased, but the speed of learning these 2-level, 1 arcana spells was much faster. His brain could remember them very easily. After finishing all the preparation work, Andre began to read the books that he had never read before. He knew that he was going to die soon, so he didn't want to have any regrets. He absorbed as much knowledge as he could about the world and arcana. Because of the large amount of professional knowledge, forging and wand crafting were soon added to the list of abilities in the system. Being immersed in the sea of knowledge was always so addictive. Unfortunately, such good days had come to an end. On the 13th day, after Serena left, Ulysses finally came back. He didn't make a big fuss, nor did he roar angrily. He directly appeared in front of the boy who was fiddling with potions. He stared at him with a pair of dead eyes and asked, "Apprentice, don't you want to explain?" "Explain? No, I don't need to explain. Things are just as you guessed. I killed your little pet and then let the female knight go." Andre replied, casually, while continuing with the work at hand. It was as if the person standing beside him was not a necromancer who killed people like flies, but an insignificant clown. Not only did he not have the slightest respect, but the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he was mocking him. Interesting. You have been deceiving me all this time? I, the great Ulysses Domer, was deceived by an apprentice. Ulysses not only did not get angry, but also showed a trace of curiosity. Tell me, apprentice, what gave you the courage to resist me? Why don't you continue to pretend? Do you like that woman that much? Are you willing to sacrifice yourself for her? Andre smiled and shook his head. No, my dear teacher, you are wrong. Actually, according to my original plan, I should have continued to pretend until Serena brought the army of the Canteru Kingdom to kill you. But there was a small accident, so I had to lay my cards on the table. He did not hesitate to tell his former plan in front of the enemy. He had no intention of hiding it at all. After all, things had come to this point, and life and death were about to be determined. There was no use in hiding it. One stayed to delay me, and the other quietly escaped to get reinforcements. I have to say that you were smarter than I thought, apprentice. Ulysses' eyes showed a trace of admiration. He obviously already thought that he had the victory in his hands, so he did not mind praising the boy in front of him. Hee, I'm not as smart as you. Otherwise, the whole plan would not have been ruined by a monster. All right, let's stop with the pleasantries. May I know what you plan to do with me? On the surface, Andre deliberately put on a look of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water, but behind his back, he quietly measured his body. As soon as the other party made a move, he would immediately rush to the corridor and use magic to detonate the explosives under his feet. What do you plan to do with me? Ulysses' dry face showed a strange expression. To be honest, apprentice, you are making things difficult for me. According to the normal routine, I should strip you of your identity and throw you into the dungeon to be tortured to death. But seeing that you are so calm, I have decided to give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Oh, please speak. Andre bowed slightly and made a gesture of invitation. He wanted to see what tricks this old man was playing. Chapter 32. Ulysses pointed at the tunnel behind him and said in a hoarse voice, "Simple kill. Kill all the people I've brought back this time, and I can forgive you for what you've done in the past. Sorry, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Although I don't mind killing, I will never hurt those innocent people." Andre rejected without hesitation. He didn't know why the necromancer had been leading him to the dark side, and he didn't know what it meant, but his subconscious told him that he couldn't be led by the nose. Well, I've given you a chance. Since you don't cherish it, there's nothing I can do. After that, Ulysses' hands released 2 puffs of stinky black smoke, and he became extremely ferocious. Seeing this, Andre calmly raised the potion in his hand, threw it directly at Ulysses, and turned around to run. Before he reached the tunnel, a white light burst out behind him. Even a powerful necromancer like Ulysses couldn't avoid it, and he was shaking his head to wake up. Obviously, it was a bottle of stun potion. It was made through the combination of potions and level 0 arcane stun spell, and it could be used to create some trouble for the enemy. After estimating that he had run to a safe distance, Andre completed the tremor shock as fast as he could. A bolt of lightning flashed and hit the burning alcohol furnace fiercely. A large amount of alcohol spilled on the ground, and the fire spread quickly. In the blink of an eye, the alcohol flowed into the ground through a small hole. In an instant, a loud explosion spread throughout the tunnel. Boom! The terrifying explosion flattened the entire laboratory. The white phosphorus and alcohol produced a high-temperature flame that devoured everything. He could even feel that breathing became more and more difficult. This was the result of burning a large amount of oxygen. Poisoned iron pieces were scattered everywhere, on the walls and the ceiling. Such a violent explosion, even Andre, the initiator, didn't expect it. He got up from the ground and shook off the dust on his body. He stared at the devastated alchemy room and muttered to himself, "Teacher, I said I would give you a big surprise, but I'm afraid you won't like it now." "No, apprentice. On the contrary, I like it very much." Ulysses slowly stood up from the ground, accompanied by thick black smoke. At this moment, his face is covered in blood, and the sharp piece of poisoned iron has even pierced his throat. But what is surprising is that this old man is not dead, and the dirty robe of God is actually intact. He didn't care about his own body at all, allowing the little blood to flow freely. As he walked, he asked, "This is your trump card? This is what you're relying on to kill me?" It might not be a problem to deal with mages of other factions, but to necromancers, it was like scratching an itch. Now, let me show you the true strength of the necromancy faction. Andre had considered many possibilities before he made his move. For example, before he could activate it, he would be restrained by his opponent, or he would not succeed in detonating it, or the explosion would not be powerful enough, or he would be blocked by his opponent's mysterious magic. But this didn't include taking all the power of the explosion and being covered with fatal wounds, but not dying. He couldn't imagine how a person could continue to live after his throat was pierced, and even his speech was not affected. And the black robe that was completely intact was definitely not something ordinary. It was very likely to be a legendary magic item, or would have been burned to ashes by the flames long ago. Seeing that the necromancer was getting closer and closer to him, Andre immediately cast a mage armor on himself as fast as he could. Although he couldn't guarantee that this layer of invisible field would work, at least it was better than nothing. As a powerful spellcaster, Ulysses, of course, couldn't fail to recognize the protection spell that this low-level mage often used. It was because he recognized it that he stopped in his tracks in surprise. Oh, first-level Arcane Mage Armor. You really surprised me, apprentice. No, I shouldn't call you an apprentice anymore. You are now the real mage, Andre. What a miracle, from learning magic to becoming an official mage. You only used a little more than 2 months. I'm afraid that if this were to spread, those idiots who only know how to hide in the tower all day would be scared to death. Thank you. Andre very politely bowed. But even if I become an official mage, what can I do? In front of you, I am still a weakling without any power to resist. Before I die, can I have the honor of knowing how you are still alive with your throat pierced? Although he looked very calm on the surface, in reality, one of his hands was already on the small bomb behind his back. As long as he saw the right opportunity, he would rush forward and die together. After all, when a rabbit is anxious, it will still want people, let alone a person who is forced into a desperate situation. Perhaps the explosion just now made Ulysses afraid. So he stopped 5 meters away from the youth and pointed to the metal plate that was pierced into his neck and explained, "For a normal person, this kind of injury can be considered fatal. But you seem to have forgotten that a necromancer is a master of the body and soul. I have long modified my body to be like an undead creature, relying on pure negative energy to survive, so normal injuries are useless." Andre nodded in realization. I see. So if I want to kill you, the best way is to destroy your head? Huh, that's right. But it's a pity that you don't have the chance. It just so happens that this body has reached the end of its lifespan, so it's time to change to a new one. After saying this, Ulysses suddenly opened his mouth, and a white translucent thing emerged from within. Then, the half-solid skeleton let out a terrifying shriek and rushed into the youth's head. Then, the old and withered body fell to the ground with a plop, as if dead. Andre's situation was even more strange. He stood on the spot and trembled nonstop. His eyes were tightly shut, and his upper and lower teeth were tightly clenched together. Every muscle on his body was twitching. At this moment, another battle was taking place in the depths of his soul. Stop struggling. Let me devour your soul. This kind of pointless resistance will only increase the pain. The translucent skeleton hovered in the gray sky and roared loudly. He looked so ferocious that it was obviously the soul of Ulysses. Chapter 33. Andre, who was standing on the ground, looked so weak and small. One of his arms was missing, and the translucent silver soul was dim. It seemed that he was heavily injured. He didn't expect things to develop to this stage. It seemed that this evil necromancer wanted to devour his soul and take over his body. No bombs, no arcane spells, no magic pets. This was a completely foreign world. Before this, Andre didn't even know if he had soul. Now he had to use his soul to fight. No matter how he looked at it, this was the worst situation. He could accept being killed, tortured, and humiliated, but he definitely couldn't accept his soul and consciousness being eroded. Just when he was at his wit's end, his remaining hand suddenly started to heat up. In the next second, the eye-shaped tattoo suddenly opened and shot out a dazzling beam of light, instantly hitting Ulysses in the sky. What is this? Damn it, damn it. It actually chased me away. Following the necromancer's screams and wails, the translucent skeleton became smaller and smaller. Finally, it completely disappeared from the soul world. Even the arm that was torn off fell and returned to its original position. Andre didn't have time to react before he was sucked away by a powerful force. In the next second, his consciousness seemed to have bumped into something. He hurriedly opened his eyes and was shocked to find that he had regained control of his body, as if nothing had happened. On the other side, Ulysses had also returned to his scratch body and was trying to crawl up from the ground. However, he looked a little haggard now. His black robe and waist bag were gone, and his shriveled skin and muscles were all exposed. Seeing this, Andre's lips curled up. Without hesitation, he took out a small bomb from his back and threw it forward, shouting, "Farewell, my dear teacher." The palm-sized wooden bucket rolled in an arc in the air and slammed into the ground. At this moment, a huge bat suddenly descended from the sky, trying to knock the wooden bucket away. However, Andre didn't give it a chance. He decisively took out the dagger he carried with him and threw it out. Although it didn't stab the bat, it forced it to change its flight path. Then, the wooden bucket finally fell to the ground. The nitroglycerin that had always been sensitive to machinery instantly reacted. The next second, boom, the violent explosion blasted Ulysses into smithereens. His old head was like a smashed watermelon. Red and white brain matter splattered all over the tunnel. The bat let out a scream and disappeared without a trace. Hit the vital point. Fatal blow activated. Ulysses Domer suffered a total of 65 damage. Target's head destroyed. Dead. Gained 5,000 EXP. Congratulations, you won a battle between mages. You'll be rewarded with a magic-related specialty. You have gained the meta-magic ability, Silent Spell. Seeing the message in his vision, Andre finally breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately added all the 5,000 EXP he had just gained to the mage profession. Are you sure you want to allocate 5,000 EXP to the mage profession? Yes. Your mage level has increased to level 4. You have gained 1 ability point. You have gained 1 attribute point. Your magic pet has increased to level 4. You have used 1 ability point to choose casting material exemption. You have used 1 ability point to add to intelligence. Name, Andrarace, human alignment, neutral, good attributes, strength, 7 agility, 15 vitality, 8 intelligence, 19 perception, 12 charm, 11 profession. Mage level 4 experience required to level up, 6,000/10,000 number of memorizable arcane spells, level 0 for level 1. For level 2, 3 currently mastered arcane spells, level 0, Mage Hand, Read Magic, Illuminate, Repair, Secret Imprint, Magic Trick, Tremor, Stun level 1. Prismatic Spray, Mage Armor, Grease Health Points, 8/14, Injured Status plus Severe Malnutrition. Experience Points, 1945, Unallocated Ability Points, 0 Attribute Points, 0 Mastered Abilities. Basic Potioneering, Magic Item Crafting, Scroll Copying, Summon Magic Pet, Beginner Forging, Beginner Wand Crafting, Spell Casting. You won't need any materials to cast spells in the future. Silent Spell Casting. As the name suggests, you can cast arcane spells without making a sound, but you have to pay a higher price when you memorize them. For example, if you want to make a level 0 arcane spell silent, you have to use a level 1 arcane spell to memorize it, and so on. Magic Pet Information Name, Small Eyes Race, Small Eyes, Magic Creature, Alignment, Neutral, Evil Profession, Magic Pet Level 4. This creature's level increases as its master's level increases. Strength, 7 Agility, 16 Vitality, 9 Intelligence, 6 Perception, 10 Charm, 12 Health Points, 1919, Healthy, Special Abilities, Cold Ray, 24 shots per day. Immune to Charm, Spells Innate Magic Resistance Flight Master Abilities. Alertness, my strength has increased a lot, but the number of spells I have mastered is a little less. After looking at his new attributes after leveling up, Andre sighed to himself. Just at the moment he raised his head, the small eyes flew towards him with a dirty black robe and a waste bag in its mouth. It threw them all in front of its master like it was presenting a treasure, and let out a roar of unknown meaning. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Small Eyes had grown a little bigger after leveling up. Huh. So it was you little rascal who took away all the things on Ulysses. Well done. After we escape, I will definitely get you some delicious food as a reward. Through the connection between the magic pet and the mage, Andre immediately understood the meaning of Small Eyes. He smiled and patted its meatball-like body, and then began to check the spoils of war. First was the robe worn by the necromancer. He only knew that it had a strong defensive ability, but he didn't know anything else. Next was the scroll box in the waist bag. There were about 20 magic scrolls, ranging from level 1 to level 6, and there were basically no duplicates. This discovery made Andre instantly fall into ecstasy. His biggest shortcoming at the moment was the lack of spell types, and this all made up for it. Magic scrolls were an extremely expensive and rare thing, especially those above level 3. Even if you had money, you couldn't buy them. You had to become a close apprentice of a great mage or join a powerful organization to be able to get them. Chapter 34. Next was a large bag of strange spellcasting materials, but since he already had the spellcasting material exemption ability, it was not of much use at all. Finally, there was a dark red book that reeked of blood. Obviously, this was Ulysses' spell book. However, due to the very complicated enchantment on it, he could not open it at all with his current level as a mage. In addition to the above, there was also a small bag of gems in the pouch. There were not many of them, only about 20 or so. They were basically rubies, sapphires, and diamonds, and looked very beautiful. Just as Andre was immersed in the joy of harvesting the spoils of war, a crack suddenly appeared on the wall beside him, and then it collapsed with a bang. If not for the magic pet's reminder, he would have been crushed to death by the huge rock. Damn it, what the hell is going on? Could it be that my explosion just now broke the supporting structure? Standing on the violently shaking ground, Andre muttered to himself in disbelief. However, now was obviously not the time to think about it. He immediately picked up all the things on the ground, turned around, and ran in the direction of the exit. When he passed by the warehouse, he also picked up a leather backpack, a water bottle, a crossbow, a quiver full of crossbow bolts, a large bag of unknown gold coins, and a bundle of rope. As an experienced hunter, he knew that he could not panic at a time like this. If he was not prepared, he would die in a dangerous frozen wasteland, even if he escaped. However, fate seemed to especially like to play tricks on the smart. When Andre ran with all his might to the front hall, he was shocked to find that the passage leading to the outside had been completely blocked, and there was no way out at all. Watching as the speed of the collapse became faster and faster, he sat on the ground with a helpless and bitter smile on his face. This is really the case. Man proposes, God disposes. I tried my best to get rid of Ulysses, but in the end, I'm going to be buried with him. Just as the young man closed his eyes and waited for death, Little Eye opened its mouth full of sharp teeth and took out a scroll box from the pouch. It took out a dark yellow scroll and placed it in front of its master, crying out loudly. You want me to activate this scroll? Andre muttered to himself as he looked at his familiar in disbelief. He suddenly remembered that a book mentioned that beholders were very sensitive to arcane spells. Although the Eye of the Ball was one of the weaker branches, it had undoubtedly inherited this talent. With the mentality of making every possible effort, he stuffed the scroll box back into his waist pouch. Then, he cast Unsummon on his magical pet. After the small eye was completely gone, he carefully activated the spell on the scroll. In an instant, an intense white light flashed. The young man's figure completely disappeared. Only in the end did he realize that the scroll recorded a level 5 teleportation spell, which could teleport people very far away. Unfortunately, he had chosen the furthest distance without knowing anything. Andre had just teleported away when the entire front hall completely collapsed. Huge rocks and soil buried everything. From the outside, the whole mountain was shaking violently and even caused an avalanche. The deafening roar could be heard clearly even tens of kilometers away. As for himself, he felt as if his body was being squeezed flat, passing through an unknown crevice. A dazzling light flashed in front of his eyes. After a short few seconds, he seemed to have been pushed by someone and fell hard to the ground. For a moment, the world was spinning, and he did not recover for a long time. The intense dizziness made him unable to hold back. He lay on the ground and vomited. Dark green liquid spurted out of his esophagus, making his whole mouth bitter and astringent. After vomiting, Andre regained some consciousness and hurriedly got up from the ground. He breathed in the fresh air while carefully observing his surroundings. There was no snow, no bone-chilling wind, and the surrounding temperature was about 15 or 16 degrees. A large number of unknown birds flew around in the sky, and the moisture content in the air was very high. All in all, this was a place far away from the Cantera Kingdom, probably in the south. As for the specific location, he did not know. After all, there was no complete map of this world. Many countries and cities regarded this as a taboo, afraid that their enemies would use it to their advantage. Although the current situation was not good, it was not terrible either. As a hunter, he could easily obtain what he needed in the forest. Coupled with the power of arcane spells, even if he encountered powerful beasts, there was nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, as long as he went in one direction, he would eventually find a town or traveler. When the time came, he could ask about the situation. All right, take it easy. At least I didn't die with Ulysses, nor was I teleported to a dangerous place. At least I didn't lose an arm or a leg. Besides, isn't it always my dream to go out and see the outside world? Andre comforted himself as he shook off the mud on his body. His character had already been trained to be incomparably tough in the world of ice and snow in Lonely Mountain Town, and he had also been retrained by the necromancer. Therefore, he did not care about this little problem at all. He quickly took out his crossbow and carefully explored the forest. Unlike the harsh environment and dangerous Black Forest, this forest was obviously much safer. Many of the wild rabbits were very bold, and they were not afraid at all when they saw strangers. They continued to calmly graze on the grass until they were a little closer. Only then would they raise their butts and jump a few steps forward. Obviously, this situation could only mean two things. One was that there were very few people nearby, and the other was that there were no large carnivores nearby. After walking all the way south for 3 to 4 hours, Andre was a little tired. Stamina and strength were not his strong points in the first place, and he was carrying a huge bag on his back. Therefore, he decided to find a place to sit down and rest for a while. He would eat some food and learn a few spells while he was at it. It was a combination of work and rest. Perhaps he had finally gotten rid of his bad luck. After a few minutes, he finally found a relatively flat rock. Without saying a word, he took off his bag and sat on it, panting heavily. Cough, 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 cough. The rapid breathing caused Andre's old illness to act up again. He coughed violently for a while, then opened his personal belongings and took out a scroll box. He began a search for a level 1 or 2 scroll that he could use. At the same time, he took out a small piece of dried meat and chewed on it. As a transmigrator who had a strong interest in supernatural powers, he quickly forgot about the time and immersed himself in the world of arcane arts. It did not take long for him to find 5 scrolls that could be used at the moment from the 20 over scrolls. Chapter 35. They were level 1 magic. Identify can be used to identify various items, scrolls, and books to obtain detailed information. Magic missile shoots a flashing missile to hit the target. 1 missile will be added for every 2 levels of the mage. At most, 5 missiles can be shot at the same time. Burning Hand shoots cone-shaped flames from the hands of the spellcaster, burning all creatures within range. Level 2 magic. Invisibility can make the target creature invisible to the naked eye, but any attack or spell casting will lead to exposure. Spider Web shoots a large, sticky spider web, trapping all enemies in the area. The stronger the enemy, the easier it is to break free. There are not many spells, but they were all very practical. It seemed that Ulysses had prepared them for himself. After all, normal spell casting required time, but the scroll only needed to be activated. Time passed by, and in the blink of an eye, the sun had set When the last trace of light completely disappeared, Andre was shocked to find that it was dark. Fortunately, he had just learned the last new spell, so other than being unable to see, there was nothing wrong. As he did not have the memory of illuminate, there was no way to create a light source. He could only silently lie on the rock and close his eyes to rest. He absolutely did not dare to sleep. Although he had not encountered any carnivores so far, there was always a what if, so he planned to wait until he summoned his magic pet tomorrow to have a good rest. For now, it was better to hold on a little longer. Although it was a good idea, Andre neglected one point. When people were tired, even if they just sat down and rested for a while, they could fall asleep. First, he had a battle of wits with the terrifying necromancer. Then he had to escape in the tunnel that was about to collapse. And finally, he had to walk continuously for several hours in the forest. Whether it was physically or mentally, he had reached his limit. Now that his tense nerves finally relaxed, he unknowingly fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time, he vaguely heard a burst of noise in his ears. "Steve, stop fighting. There are too many of these goblins. If we continue, we will all die." "No, we can't give up Bill and Alexia. They're trapped inside. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I knew that something would go wrong with this mission." "Don't talk nonsense. Take your weapon and get ready to fight. We, the adventurers of Lincoln City, are not cowards who abandon their companions." "Human, it's a human voice." Andre abruptly opened his eyes and instantly saw a bright fire in the distance. At the same time, there were curses and battle cries. It seemed that someone had encountered trouble. Without any hesitation, he picked up his backpack and ran towards the scene of the incident with his crossbow. It was not easy to meet someone of the same kind in this wilderness. No matter what, he had to help them and ask for directions. Otherwise, he did not know how long it would take for him to see a town. With years of hunting experience, Andre had learned a kind of light footwork. He passed through the bushes and woods and entered the ambush area without making any sound. A group of short creatures with orange skin, wide faces, flat noses, pointy ears, and big mouths were running quickly. They were short about 3 to 1, 4 meters tall, wearing tattered gray leather clothes, holding sticks and with style in their hands, and making strange cries. Even though it was his first time seeing them, he immediately recognized that they were the famous goblins. Of course, famous was only a form of sarcasm. Even the women of Lonely Mountain Town looked down on goblins. Any human above the age of 14 could kill a goblin in a one-on-one battle, not to mention the mountain people who often had close contact with the beastmen. However, these little creatures were not completely useless. When their numbers reached a certain level, they could immediately cause massive destruction. The scene before his eyes was the best proof of that. Hundreds of goblins surrounded the 5 humans in the middle. It looked like the odds were against them. A young girl with a bow and arrow was about to cry. Seeing that the situation was dire, Andre did not have time to think. He immediately raised his crossbow and pulled the trigger without even aiming, killing 2 goblins in an instant. The massive penetrative power of the crossbow bolts was a nightmare for these little creatures with weak bodies. Every bolt killed 2 to 3 goblins. Seeing their own kind fall one after another, even the less intelligent goblins began to panic. They raised their tattered shields vigilantly and looked around for the attacker. "Trying to find me? Dream on." Andre secretly despised the intelligence of the goblins. He quickly changed his position and chose a blind spot. He continued to repeat the actions from before. Pulling the bowstring, loading the crossbow, aiming, shooting, puffed. The crossbow bolts once again accurately pierced through 2 targets. A row of notifications popped up in his vision. Hit a vital point. Fatal blow activated. Dealt 14 points of damage to goblin. Target's vital organs destroyed. Dead. Obtained 5 EXP. EXP 2010 unallocated. Looking at the pitiful amount of EXP, he silently sighed. As expected of the famous goblins, you should know that killing an adult male deer gives you 10 EXP. 2 of these little monsters together are only worth 1 male deer. No wonder they're looked down upon by so many people. In fact, the goblins' combat power was not as weak as the young man imagined. Otherwise, they would not have been called an undefeatable disaster. Although their strength was lower than an adult's, they were more agile due to their small size. They also liked to swarm forward. Ambushes, traps, throwing javelins, and sneak attacks were all goblin specialties. Under the leadership of a smart leader, goblins would quickly become cunning and despicable. They were even capable of using some simple tactics. In short, they were a troublesome enemy. Andre, who planned to shoot another arrow and move to another location, suddenly discovered a very muscular creature that was about the same height as a human. It was obvious that it was the leader of this tribe. As a transmigrator, he understood better than anyone the principle of capturing the leader. So, he gritted his teeth and carefully approached, wanting to use the crossbow in his hand to shoot through the head of the goblin. When he was less than 20 meters away from the target, the goblin leader suddenly turned its head. Its ugly face revealed a trace of malevolence. It then pointed at the place where the young man was hiding and opened its mouth to roar out some words unique to the goblins. Chapter 36. Damn it, this guy's eyes have night vision. Andre cursed under his breath. Without waiting for the other goblins to surround him, he jumped out and pulled the trigger without hesitation, killing the two closest goblins. Then, he began to chant a spell loudly. In just a few seconds, he raised one of his arms and shot out a large amount of magic grease. All the goblins that rushed over slid to the ground, including the leader. Seeing that there were no more enemies around to disturb him, he immediately went into casting mode again. This time, he was even faster. In the blink of an eye, he had completed the second arcane spell. A white electric light accurately hit the goblin leader, electrocuting him until he was foaming at the mouth. At the same time, the electric spark ignited a large amount of grease and grass, turning the area into a purgatory. A large amount of information began to pop up on his retina. The raging fire devoured the lives of dozens of goblins. Painful screams and wails filled the air above the forest. Some of the goblins that were on fire wanted to rush out to seek help from their own kind, but they fell to the ground with a plop after taking a few steps. They never got up again. The combination of the level 1 grease spell and level 0 tremor shock spell was so effective that even Andre, the initiator of the spell, was a little surprised. He looked at the fire that was burning more and more fiercely. He rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, "Flammable grease can be ignited as long as it is exposed to high temperatures. So, when low-level spells are used together, they can produce such a powerful effect. No wonder wizards are respected by everyone." As their leader and a large number of their companions were burned alive, the remaining goblins scattered and ran for their lives. To these cowardly goblins, once they lost their leader or saw no hope of victory, it was normal for them to run away. The 5 rescued goblins hurriedly helped each other to the front of the young man. One of them, who looked the oldest and had a full beard, put one hand on his chest and bowed deeply. "Good evening, Honorable Wizard. My name is Alger, the leader of this adventure team. Thank you very much for your help, or we would have died today." "You're welcome. As a member of the human race, I'm very happy to help my compatriots out of their predicament." Andre nodded and said with a smile. He noticed that the man spoke in the common tongue of the continent, and his tone was respectful. His eyes, in particular, inadvertently revealed a trace of fear. It seemed that the status of mages in this area was quite high, at least much higher than that of the Cantera Kingdom. This was because even though Serena was very excited when she found out that he had become a mage, she was far from this level. "You are truly a generous and benevolent mage. May I take the liberty to ask, where are you planning to go? If it's on the way, maybe we can go together. Although our strength is not worth mentioning compared to yours, we can still do some chores." Alger's tone was very humble, and he used honorifics with almost every word. It was hard to imagine that these words came from the mouth of such a bold and muscular man. However, ever since he saw the terrifying power contained in Ulysses' withered body, Andre had learned not to judge a book by its cover. After all, There were too many mysterious things in this world, so he had to be more careful. He definitely couldn't tell the truth to these strangers. So he thought for a moment and immediately put on a helpless look and spread his hands. I don't know where I'm going. I don't even know where I'm going. All of this is because of a failed magic experiment. I was sent here by an unknown force. Oh, goddess of fortune above. I've heard of how terrible a failed magic experiment is. It's said that many mages have lost their lives because of it. A girl in the team covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Yes, the magic experiment I participated in caused a violent explosion. The whole place collapsed, and I don't know how many people died," Andre said with a face full of fear. The expression on his face was not fake, but rather, it was because he recalled the dangerous situation when he fought with the necromancer. Hearing that the youth didn't have a clear goal, Alger hurriedly extended an invitation. "Since you don't have a goal, why don't you come with us back to Lincoln City? That's our hometown, and it's also the closest city to here." Andre, who was playing right into Alger's hands, put on a nonchalant look and shrugged. "Well, that's all I can do. My name is Andre. You can just call me that. There's no need to add those awkward prefixes. Anyway, I don't care." After saying that, he began to look at his temporary teammates one by one, secretly guessing their professions. It was impossible for an ordinary person to hold on for too long under the siege of so many goblins. They must have some powerful professions. "I'm Steve. They call me Blockhead." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Mage." A young man who looked like a farmer first stood up and introduced himself. He looked very honest, and the first to fight to the death should be this guy. Another black-haired young man who looked younger said in a half-joking tone, That's right. You're a blockhead. You saw so many goblins and still turn around to save them. You're so stupid, but I'm glad to have such a stupid partner." "Hello, Mr. Mage. My name is Bill. They call me Smarty." "My name is Alexia. If you think it's too long, you can call me Alexia. Thank you again for saving all of us with your powerful spells." After introducing herself, the girl showed a sweet smile on her face, which made the other young men look at her. The last one to stand up was a burly man who was more than 2 meters tall, carrying a shield and an axe. He held back for a long time and finally squeezed out a sentence. "My name is Charlie. My nickname is Blockhead. If you need any help, please don't hesitate. I'm good at this." "Nice to meet you. Now we know each other. Let's go. I know a relatively safe place to rest in the West." After saying that, Andre turned around and walked toward the place where he slept. But before he could take a few steps, Alger stopped him with a face full of surprise. "Sir, don't you want to clean up the battlefield and look for spoils?" "Spoils?" Andre turned around and glanced at the charred corpses on the ground and pursed his lips. "Forget it. I don't think there's anything valuable on these dirty little monsters. Besides, my luggage is already heavy enough. I can't carry more." Chapter 37. No. You clearly don't understand these goblins well enough. Even though they're dirty and smelly, they still have quite a few good things on them. Please wait here for a moment. We'll be able to prove this point immediately. As for the problem of heavy luggage, it's even easier to handle. Just leave it to Charlie. He has plenty of strength. After Alger finished speaking, he didn't give the youth any time to object. He immediately called for the other 4 to begin rummaging through the charred corpses. It had to be said that they were extremely professional in this area. In a short 10 minutes, they had obtained 7 or 8 gemstones, about 50 to 60 gold coins that weren't very heavy, 300 silver coins of the same weight, a large bag of copper coins, 2 long swords that were still in decent condition, a stinking steel helmet, and finally a pair of iron gloves. Shocking. Andre didn't know what to say at this moment. He had never thought that these dirty goblins would be able to find so many useful things. Lonely Mountain Town was isolated from the rest of the world, and they basically bartered for items. Due to the limited transportation capacity, there weren't many things that could be used as goods, so currency was rarely used. However, he still knew a little about the prices of goods outside. Ordinary workers could only earn 1 small silver coin a day, even if they worked hard. Only skilled craftsmen could earn 1 small gold coin. In the market, a chicken only cost 6 copper coins. The amount of money in front of him was enough for many people to save up for several years without eating or drinking. Sometimes Andre would wonder why the commoners didn't revolt and overthrow the nobles above their heads when the gap between the rich and the poor was so great. After coming into contact with feudal knights and arcane magic, he finally found the answer to this question. It wasn't that the commoners didn't want to revolt, but that the power of the rulers was just too great. A fully armed feudal knight could easily kill 50 or even 100 commoners, and a wizard was even more terrifying. This was especially so after mastering a destructive rank 3 arcane spell. They were basically human weapons. Under such circumstances, who would dare to resist? The answer was no one. In this world, the foundation of feudal rule was as stable as a rock. All reforms had to be done from the top down in order to have a chance of success. Otherwise, they would only be like moths flying into a flame. Looking at the pile of spoils in front of him, Andre felt a little helpless. In particular, there was a large bag of copper coins that weighed at least 10 kilograms. He didn't want any of that, and there were also swords, iron gloves, and helmets and other junk. According to the currency of the Canterbury Kingdom, a small gold coin could be exchanged for 214 copper coins. Who would be so idle as to carry a heavy bag of copper coins? Although he didn't know the exchange rate of Linton City, it shouldn't be too far off. However, Alger didn't notice the rejection in the young man's eyes. He pointed at the items on the ground enthusiastically and said, "All the valuable items are here. If there's no problem, I'll let Charlie carry them and return them to you when we reach Linton City." "No, there's no need. Just give me the gold coins and gems. Take the rest as a reward for your hard work in searching." He was a little tired after such a long time and didn't want to be entangled with these people any longer. Most importantly, as a mage, if he couldn't get 8 hours of sufficient sleep, he wouldn't be able to remember arcane spells the next day. This wasn't good news in this dangerous forest. Bill looked at the spoils on the ground and asked helplessly, "Boss, what should we do now?" "What else can we do? Pick up the items and follow. Didn't you hear what the generous mage said? These will be our reward." After saying that, Alger took the lead and grabbed the bag full of silver coins and iron gloves and followed closely behind the young man. When the others saw this situation, they also took 1 or 2 items. As for the heaviest copper coins, they left them for the strong Charlie. With the help of the fire that hadn't been extinguished, the group quickly arrived near a flat rock. The honest Steve immediately picked up some firewood and used a flint to light a bonfire. The temperature in the forest was very low at night, and with the fire, everyone didn't feel cold anymore. This was especially so for the few young men who had survived the disaster. They all looked at Andre with curiosity and awe, and didn't have the slightest intention of resting. Perhaps Andre wouldn't mind chatting with them on a normal day, but he was too tired today, so he just smiled at everyone and closed his eyes to sleep. Not long after, soft snoring sounds could be heard. "Hey, Kashia, what do you think of the mage who saved us?" Bill, who was the most quick-witted, asked in a low voice. "What do you think?" The only female in the group didn't understand what her companion meant, and blinked her eyes in confusion. "Not bad. He's much better than those lunatics in the city who lock themselves in the tower all day." Hearing the girl's irrelevant answer, Bill quickly shook his head and said, "No, I'm not asking about his personality, but his strength. What kind of magic do you think he used to burn so many goblins to death?" "I don't know. The power of magic isn't something normal people like us can understand. Maybe you can wait until tomorrow and ask him himself." Alexia glanced at the sleeping youth and suggested softly, "That makes sense. I'll try tomorrow. After all, he looks like he's only 14 or 15 years old. He'll definitely be easier than those white-haired old men and middle-aged mages with gloomy faces." Ouch! Before Bill could finish his sentence, Alger walked over and gave him a hard slap. He warned with a serious expression, You better give up on that idea. Don't cause trouble with your little smarts. What do you think mages are? They're the masters of supernatural powers, and their brains are 100 times smarter than yours. So don't judge a mage by his age. Be honest on the road." Damn it. I just want to know if I have the talent to become a mage. I've always been smart. I just lack an opportunity. Think about it. If I become a mage, I'll be able to control power like just now. What kind of mission can stop us in the future? Not to mention. Also, anyway, this is a living mage. How long will it take to meet a second one? Bill clenched his fists and let out a low growl. He looked so agitated that his entire face was flushed red. His eyes were burning with flames, and his teeth were biting his lips so hard that they bled. Chapter 38. Alger couldn't help but sigh when he saw his teammate like this. Sigh? All right, you can try to get close to her, but you have to promise me that you won't play any tricks. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Of course, my dear leader. I swear to the God that I believe in. Bill danced with joy after getting Alger's permission and agreed without any hesitation. A few minutes later, he fell into a deep sleep with his dream in his arms. Oh, my God, you shouldn't have agreed to this guy's request. His desire for magic has already gone crazy. If this continues, he will cause big trouble sooner or later. Alexia slapped her head and groaned. It's because of this that I have to make him give up. Bill must have a clear understanding of himself. Perhaps he is very smart to a normal person, but compared to a mage, he is nothing. It's late, have a good rest. I will take the first shift. Alger patted the girl's shoulder and stood alone by the campfire, lost in thought. The night passed uneventfully. The next morning, Andre suddenly felt a fragrance enter his nostrils. It had been a long time since he had a proper meal, so he immediately opened his eyes and saw a pot of pheasant and mushroom soup simmering on the campfire. The alluring color made him want to take a bite. Bill, who had ulterior motives, quickly put down the spoon and stood up to greet him. Aha, Sir Mage, you are finally awake. The soup will be ready soon. Please wait for another 10 minutes. You made this? Also, you don't have to call me sir. Just call me by my name. Andre said as he climbed up from the rock and moved his stiff body. Last night was the best sleep he had in a while. Without the threat of death from the necromancer, everything looked so beautiful. He even dreamed of being together with Serena. Of course, when I woke up I saw a pheasant, so I shot it down with a flying knife. Then I went to the forest to pick some mushrooms. That's how I got this pot of soup. Bill explained the origins of the pot of soup with a smile. He obviously wanted to attract the boy's attention, but unfortunately, he failed. Andre merely nodded before ignoring everyone else. He took out the magic tome wrapped in the winter wolf's fur and began to focus on memorizing the arcane spells he would need today. Everyone only heard a low chant, and then the pages of the book flashed with a brilliant light of magic. Then, a powerful force rotated in the air and entered his body little by little. When Bill saw this scene, he was instantly filled with a strong desire. He could not wait to rush over and ask how to become a mage. How could one master a powerful supernatural power? The preparation of the spell lasted for an hour, until Andre took the initiative to end the state of concentration. He had originally thought that 20 or so minutes would be enough, but halfway through, he discovered that he was taking much longer than he had expected. When he closed the book and looked up, he suddenly realized that everyone was waiting for him to start eating. He immediately spread his hands out in embarrassment. Sorry, I've wasted too much time. Sorry for making you wait. No, it's fine. It's our honor to be able to witness the power of arcane spells at such a close distance, Alger said with a deep bow. Andre noticed everyone's reverence for magic and could not help but sigh inwardly. He did not quite understand. None of these people were weak and could even hold on for a long time when surrounded by hundreds of goblins. Why did they have such an attitude towards supernatural power? If it was a real battle of life and death, and both sides had discovered each other at the same time, he would not have the confidence to kill this adventurer team. Perhaps it was because of the social system. Perhaps it was a problem left behind by history. With a head full of questions, Andre took the wooden bowl and bread from Bill and finally had his first real meal in more than 2 months. He felt that he would only be able to fully understand these questions after he entered the city and understood the ideology of the society and the psychology of the people. delicious mushrooms, fresh and tender pheasant. Although there was only a small amount of salt in the seasoning, he ate a lot. Almost a third of the soup went into his small belly, which attracted a lot of attention from the others. Mr. Mage, how long has it been since you last had decent food? Alexia finally could not hold back her curiosity and blink her eyes. How long? I don't remember clearly. Maybe 2 months, maybe a bit longer. Anyway, the only thing I ate before was meat jerky, and that's it. Andre said as he took out a large piece of black and hard meat from his bag. No matter what it was, eating it for more than 2 months would make people want to vomit. Anyway, he did not want to eat roasted meat or meat jerky for the rest of his life. So he took it out and shared it with his new friends. Alexia took it and sniffed it lightly. Her eyes immediately lit up. She took out the dagger she always carried with her and cut off a piece. After chewing twice, she immediately exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's so fragrant. What kind of meat is this?" Hee, since it's so delicious, let me try a piece. The big guy Charlie, who was not full, took the initiative to ask for a piece. Give me a piece too. Me too. After half a minute, everyone took a piece of jerky and chewed it with relish. They all nodded and praised it, saying that it was the most delicious jerky they had ever eaten in their lives. But in Andre's eyes, these fellows were just standing there and talking. After a few days of eating a single food, people would start to get sick of it. After a while, they would feel nauseous and vomit. In the end, they might even become anorexic. If it was possible, he really wanted them to try eating jerky for a month. At that time, he could guarantee that everyone would reflexively vomit whenever they saw jerky. Mr. Mage, can I ask what kind of animal this jerky is made from? Alexia, who was still unsatisfied, licked her fingers and asked. Andre smiled helplessly. He raised the spell book in his hand and answered, "It's the same as the white fur on the cover of this book. It's from a large canine in the north, the winter wolf." In fact, he also felt that this matter was a bit coincidental. In his hurry to escape, he actually took the unfinished winter wolf meat that he had roasted for the first time. It was not spoiled at all after 2 months, and for some reason, it had dried up. Winter wolf. Alger's expression changed slightly, revealing a very surprised expression. If I remember correctly, this seems to be a magic beast from the north. Chapter 39. That's right. It's a giant white wolf that can spit out cone-shaped cold air from its mouth. Any human or animal that gets hit by it will turn into ice in an instant. They have intelligence no lower than humans. Some can even speak the common language fluently. They are one of the most difficult beasts to deal with in the north. After explaining to everyone what the winter wolf was, Andre put down the wooden bowl and stood up. He silently took out the black robe that originally belonged to Ulysses and used the level 1 arcane spell identify on it. In an instant, detailed information popped up in his vision. Identifying unknown magic robe. Difficulty, medium. Identification, successful. Congratulations, you've obtained a flame protection robe. Flame protection robe. This is a powerful magic robe designed and made by the necromancer Ulysses Domer for himself. It uses the soul of a large fire elemental and the spider silk of a frost spider in the far north. It has an extremely strong defensive ability, especially against fire and physical damage. Equipment ability reduces fire damage by 90%. The soul of the fire elemental blocks the flames from approaching. Reduces physical damage by 40%. The silk of the frost spider is very tough. It's difficult for ordinary weapons to pierce through. After reading all the information about the magic robe, Andre finally understood the real reason why the big bomb he made didn't kill the necromancer. It turned out that this magic robe had blocked most of the damage. Therefore, when the magic robe was stolen by Small Eye, the old man was instantly like a turtle without a shell and was easily killed by the second bomb. Fortunately, this magic robe now belonged to him. As long as he wore it, it was equivalent to adding a bulletproof vest to himself. Ordinary arrows and weapons would be blocked when passing through the robe. Some of the weapons that weren't very good quality couldn't even pierce through the surface of the robe. Of course, he had to wash it well before wearing it. He didn't know how long it had been since Ulysses last washed it. Not only was there a thick layer of oil and dirt on it, but there were also densely packed, small black insects in the gaps of the silk threads. It would make one's scalp tingle just by looking at it. Even a level 0 arcane spell magic trick couldn't clean up clothes that were so dirty to such an extent. Not long after breakfast, the adventure team finally extinguished the bonfire and set off in the southwest direction. Under the leadership of Alger, everyone carefully avoided the areas marked as dangerous on the map. Through the conversation, Andre gradually understood that the forest was just as he had predicted. There were no large carnivores, but instead, there were many humanoid creatures like gnomes, kobolds, and ogres. These guys had driven away most of the carnivores a long time ago and turned this place into their own hunting ground. Not only did they attack passing merchants and travelers, but they would also form an alliance to plunder villages and towns when food was scarce. Every time, they would cause terrible damage. It was obvious that this place was essentially no different from Lonely Mountain Town. The only difference was that the environment was not as harsh, and the enemies were not as ferocious as the orcs. Gradually, he came to know his current location. It was a city-state called the Green Sea Alliance, far away from the Cantera Kingdom. It was at least 700 kilometers away from his hometown, and it was unlikely that he would be able to return anytime soon. Fortunately, the Green Sea Alliance placed great importance on the power of arcane magic. As such, all mages were given high status. As long as one was willing to join the official Sorcerers Association, not only would they receive a lot of resources, but they would also receive a noble title, land, and wealth if they made contributions. It was precisely because of this that the adventure team was so respectful. In their eyes, this youth with long, fiery red hair would sooner or later become a high and mighty figure, while they could only struggle in the wilderness as adventurers. Only when they were too old to do so would they use their savings to start a small business until they died. Because it was an alliance of city-states, the organization of the Green Sea Alliance was rather loose. Each city-state had its own ruler, and they usually didn't interfere with each other. They would only gather to discuss solutions when encountering enemies or disputes. If there was no end to the arguments, they would vote, and as long as 2/3 of the people agreed, the agreement would be passed. It had to be said that Andre was stunned when he first heard this. He never thought that there would be such an advanced political system in this barbaric and backward world. It sounded no different from a parliamentary system. The only difference was that only the nobles had the right to vote. As for the commoners, they didn't care if they lived or died. As for the Linton city mentioned in the conversation, it was a beautiful port city ranked 3rd in the Green Sea Alliance. Its navy was very powerful, and it was said that their large ships were equipped with giant crossbows. They could often shoot down pirates until they lost their bearings. Due to the prosperity of trade, the city was quite rich. Almost everything on the continent could be bought in the market. It could be said that it was a paradise for merchants. So you're saying that as long as I enter Linton City and register at the Sorcerers Association, I'll be able to enjoy a lot of privileges and resources? Andre asked with great interest. He couldn't wait to see what the big cities of this world looked like. He wanted to see if they were as majestic and magnificent as the ones in the fantasy movies. Bill smiled and nodded. Of course, as long as you can prove that you're an official mage. But once you join the Sorcerers Association, you'll have to complete a mission every month. It's said that this is to help the members integrate better, and the rewards are great. It's not that hard to accept. Since the beginning of the journey, he had been trying to curry favor with the young man in front of him. He answered all of his questions, and even a fool could tell that he was up to something. As a transmigrator who had lived 2 lives, Andre could feel the black-haired young man's strong intentions, but he didn't care. He continued to ask, "Then do you know how many people there are in Lindon City and how many mages there are?" Hee, you've asked the right person. I've secretly asked around before. Currently, there are 60 registered mages in the Sorcerers Association, but less than half of them appear frequently. The rest are either hiding somewhere to study or travel. As for the population, it's hard to determine because there are too many merchants. I can only estimate that it's around 100,000. After hearing Bill's words, Andre immediately frowned. You're saying that there are only 60 mages in a city of 100,000 people? He couldn't believe that the rate of mages was so low. More than 1 in 1,600. It was really 1 in 1,000. It was unbelievable. Chapter 40. Yes, as you know, magic education has to be taught one-to-one. The whole process takes 3 to 5 years, and there can't be any accidents during the process. Otherwise, the apprentice will die immediately. It's because of this that mages are so powerful. Bill became more and more excited as he spoke, and his hands even began to tremble in the end. Andre noticed his strange behavior and asked with a playful smile, "You want to learn magic?" "Yes. I've always dreamed of learning magic." Bill nodded desperately, his eyes full of anticipation. "All right, I'll give you a chance," Andre said as he took out Magic Enlightenment from his pouch. This book had a special meaning to him, so he had been carrying it with him ever since he finished reading it. He wanted to remember that only the strong could live without being threatened in this world. Gently stroking the rough pages, Andre felt a little emotional. He then passed the book to the black-haired young man. "Here, you'll take care of it before we enter the city. As for how much you can understand, it's all up to you." Bill took Magic Enlightenment with trembling hands and bowed deeply. "Thank you. You're too generous. I don't know what to say." "Don't worry. I'll definitely return it to you before we enter the city." Before you start learning, I have to remind you that arcane magic is a delicate, dangerous, and complicated power. You have to be careful, and even more careful when you come into contact with it. Otherwise, you'll be devoured in an instant. Don't try to be brave, or you'll end up in tragedy without exception. After giving the young man a stern warning, Andre no longer paid attention to Bill, who was in a frenzy and focused on his journey. As a mage, he knew all too well how dangerous the process of learning magic was. If it weren't for the help of the system, he would have died in the first stage. The process of becoming an apprentice from an ordinary person was the most dangerous. It needed to absorb the violent arcane energy into the brain. If there was even the slightest mistake, the brain would definitely explode. Many people who learned magic needed 1 or 2 years to slowly adapt to it before they could finally cross this threshold. However, most people didn't even have the courage to try. After all, death was too terrifying for any intelligent life. There was a price to pay for pursuing the power of magic. This was repeatedly mentioned in the book Magic Enlightenment. Andre had already given a warning, so Bill would have to bear the consequences himself. He only had a 1 in 1,000 chance of becoming an apprentice before entering the city. The rest was either giving up or dying. However, everyone had the right to pursue their dreams. In Andre's opinion, dying on the path of pursuing one's dreams was better than living a muddle-headed life. At least he had tried the former, but he didn't even have the courage to try the latter. The team's speed was not fast. By evening, they had only covered 1/5 of the entire journey. In fact, in such a dense forest, it was impossible for humans to walk too fast. Otherwise, they would be in big trouble if they accidentally broke into the nest of the monsters. According to the team's guide, who was also the only female in the team, Alexia, this place, which was named Border Forest, was filled with large and small goblins, kobolds, and ogres. They would follow herds of deer, horses, and wild cows as they migrated. Therefore, if one didn't want to fight, the best way was to be careful and avoid them in advance. Andre didn't say anything about this. He was so tired that his whole body was sore. He didn't even have the strength to speak. Moreover, he was coughing nonstop. Every time he exercised too much, this old illness would start to act up. In fact, his stamina and strength were far from that of a normal person. Perhaps he had enough explosive power for a short distance, but he couldn't do it for a long time. Cough, 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 cough. The other members of the team turned to look at the young man who was coughing violently as he leaned against a rock. Steve, who couldn't hold back his words, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Hey, Mr. Mage, are you okay?" Cough, cough. Pooey, pooey. Don't worry, I'm fine. Andre waved his hand and spat out the thick saliva in his mouth. He slowly slowed his breathing and stopped coughing. He slowly returned to the side of the bonfire that had just been lit. As a transmigrator, he could clearly feel that if there wasn't something wrong with his lungs, then there was something wrong with his throat and trachea. In short, although it was far from fatal, if it continued to develop, it would be a big problem sooner or later. Alexia looked at the abnormal redness on the youth's face and asked worriedly, "You seem to be sick?" Andre smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No, this is an old illness. I got it during a cold winter. I just need to rest for a while, and I'll be fine." "Oh, damn it. I think you must have caught a very serious cold. Listen to me. Once you enter the city, go to the temple and find a priest to treat you. Although their fees are expensive, it shouldn't be a problem for a mage like you," Alexia suggested with a sincere face. After a day of interaction, her lively personality was no longer as fearful of the young mage in front of her as before. Sometimes, she would even make a few harmless jokes. Alger nodded in agreement. "What Kessia said is right. You need a priest. I suggest you go to the temple of the goddess of dawn, Lucia. Not only is the price fair, but the priests are either pure and beautiful girls or mature women who exude a charming aura. I guarantee that you will want to go there again after the first time." "Ha ha ha ha. Captain, no wonder you would go to the temple to pray and donate after every mission. I've been wondering why you suddenly changed your faith to the goddess of dawn. So, it's because you have your eyes on one of the priests there. Quick, tell us, who is your target?" The outspoken Steve shouted loudly, his eyes revealing a strong sense of curiosity. The dull Charlie also revealed a gossipy expression at this moment. He stared at the leader as if to say, "If you don't explain it clearly today, don't expect to have an easy time." Seeing that he was about to face a crisis, Alger shrugged and said, "All right, since you all want to know, I won't hide it from you. I'm not interested in a priest, but the kitchen maid in the backyard, Joyce. After all, I'm just an adventurer. A priest is not something I can get close to." Alexia whistled and teased with a smile. "That's not bad. At least you will have a home soon. We have to congratulate you." "Thank you. I'm already over 30 years old. I'm not young anymore. I have to start thinking about the future." Alger smiled and accepted the blessings. Chapter 41. Looking at the group of people chatting and laughing, Andre suddenly felt that although these people were not living well, they were at least very happy. What about himself? What should he do in the future? Find a way to return to the Kinteru kingdom to find his family and Serena, and then live happily together? Or follow his original dream and walk around the streets to experience the local customs of the magical world? Or settle down in Linton City and learn arcane spells while enjoying the prosperity of this trading city? Loneliness. At this moment, Andre felt very lonely. The huge secret had doomed him to not be able to open his heart to anyone. He could only silently pursue his own path. Perhaps only the mysterious arcane spells and small eyes were his true friends and partners. He dare not ask for anything else. In fact, on the path of pursuing arcane spells, most mages were lonely. Most ordinary people could not understand where this unimaginable supernatural power came from. Therefore, some were in awe, some were fanatical, and some were disgusted. It was impossible for them to be friends. The chatting and laughing crowd soon dispersed. Steve was in charge of collecting firewood in the surroundings. The big Charlie carried his hunting bow and went to look for dinner. Alger carefully set up a few simple traps in the surroundings to ensure that if any people or beasts barged in, they would be discovered in advance. As for Bill, ever since he received magic, enlightenment, he had been reading it nonstop. He neither spoke nor made a sound. It was as if he was possessed. Andre, who had nothing to do, did not intend to stay idle. He took out the flame protection robe from his backpack and prepared to wash it at the stream in front. Although magic tricks could not clean the dirt on it, it was not a problem to dry it directly after washing it. Just as he was about to head to the stream, Alexia suddenly came over and asked curiously, "Are you going to wash your clothes?" "That's right. I'm going to clean this robe. As you can see, The oil stains and stench on it are enough to suffocate a person to death, Andre said as he shook the robe in his hand. In an instant, a pungent smell mixed with a sour stench filled the air. The girl took a sniff and immediately sneezed. She pinched her nose and sighed. "Oh my God, how long has it been since you washed this robe? I have to say, it's a miracle that it's still intact." "Indeed, it hasn't been washed for a long time, so I'm planning to take it to the stream to wash. If you want to get water to cook, you'd better hurry. Otherwise, the water there won't be usable." After saying that, Andre no longer cared about Alexia's entanglement. He quickly ran to the stream and threw the robe into it. Before he could start rubbing, the entire stream turned black and emitted a foul stench. In just a few minutes, the small fish in the downstream position floated up with their bellies swollen. It was as terrifying as a biological weapon. Looking at the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but recall Ulysses's head full of maggots and lice. He suddenly had goosebumps all over his body. He immediately squatted down and began to scrub the flame protective robe. Fortunately, the frost spider's silk was tough enough. Otherwise, it would have been torn apart. After washing for an unknown amount of time, the stream water was no longer as muddy as before, and the robe gradually revealed its original appearance. Dark red. That was the true color of the flame protective robe. Wearing a dark red robe into a pure black, the filth of Ulysses was far beyond the young man's imagination. He even felt that the necromancer didn't even need to use powerful magic. He only needed to scrape a little bit of dirt from his body to poison him to death. As the last trace of the sun disappeared from the horizon, the sky finally turned completely dark. Andre, whose arms were sore, carried the clean robe back to the campfire. He ate a simple meal and fell asleep. He had to rest well in order to cope with the long journey tomorrow. Soon, the others who had eaten dinner began to sleep one after another. Only Bill sat silently in front of the campfire and stared at the book in his hand, trying to find the way to become a mage. From his posture of concentration, it seemed that he didn't intend to rest tonight. Because he slept very early and nothing unexpected happened, Andre woke up before dawn the next day. He didn't disturb anyone and quietly put on the flame protective robe that he washed clean yesterday. He then sat down by the campfire and silently watched the black-haired young man who was frowning as he read. It was obvious that Bill hadn't slept the entire night, and he seemed to be unable to understand some of the descriptions in the book. After all, the power of arcane magic was so abstract that it was difficult for someone who had never come into contact with it to truly understand it. Andre had relied on the ability of the system to barely take the first step. He then relied on the large amount of natural science knowledge he had accumulated in his previous life and the arcane power flowing in his body to finally complete the first step in understanding it in his own way. He knew very well how difficult this knowledge was for a normal person. So he sighed and lowered his voice. "Bill, why do you desire the power of arcane magic so much?" The black-haired young man put down the book, his expression extremely twisted. He gritted his teeth and answered, "I need the power to take revenge. I like to listen to stories. Tell me, what exactly happened to you?" After saying that, Andre calmly looked into the young man's eyes and waited silently. Bill closed the book and took a few deep breaths, suppressing the burning anger and unwillingness in his heart. He recounted with a hoarse voice, "It was a mage, a powerful mage. He forcefully kidnapped my mother and sister 10 years ago and used them for inhumane experiments. In the end, they died. They all died. Their broken corpses were like garbage that was about to be thrown into the sea. I could only watch it happen, but I had no way to stop it." After hearing this, Andre instantly recalled what Ulysses had done. He immediately frowned. Did no one do anything? Isn't there a law enforcement agency in the city? Law enforcement agency? Bill laughed sarcastically. The Association of Mages is independent of the law enforcement agency. Other than the council and themselves, no one can convict them. Ever since the establishment of Lincoln City, no mage has ever been punished. Tell me his name. Andre narrowed his eyes, his entire body emitting a chilling aura. As someone who had personally experienced such things, He hated the use of innocent people for experiments. If he had the chance, he would definitely get rid of this scum like Ulysses. Chapter 42. Bill felt a strong, murderous intent from the youth. Although he didn't know why, he gritted his teeth and spat out a piece of information. Gavin Lauren, a senior member of the Mage Association. He's very powerful and once killed 2 enemy mages in a naval battle. Got it. Andre nodded and didn't say anything else. He didn't promise that he would kill this person, nor did he give any promises. However, Bill had a strong premonition that Gavin Lauren would soon die at the hands of the youth in front of him. Moreover, his death would be very tragic, just like his tortured mother and sister. In the following days, neither of them spoke a word, nor did they mention it to anyone else. It was as if it had never happened. After eating some dry rations, the whole team set off again. In order to leave this dangerous forest as soon as possible, everyone slightly increased their speed. Every day, they would wake up early and sleep late. Although they encountered some small troubles on the way, they finally reached the outskirts of the city at noon on the 4th day. Looking at the neat farmlands on both sides of the dirt road, the passing merchants and pedestrians, and the patrolling cavalry, Andre felt as if he was in the Middle Ages of Europe. Especially when he saw the tall and majestic city walls in the distance. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He couldn't believe that a city wall over 60 meters tall could be built in this backward world. This was close to the height of a 20-story building on Earth. From afar, it looked like 2 giant arms hugging the entire city. How is it? Are you surprised? Alexia asked with a playful wink. Andre nodded lightly. Yes. It's hard to imagine how a city with only 100,000 people could build such a majestic wall. I can't wait to go in and take a look. I'm sure there will be more amazing things inside. Huh. Let me tell you, this section of the wall is called the Ogre's Sigh. It's said that a long, long time ago, a powerful ogre leader led an army to ransack Lincoln City, but in the end, he couldn't break through the wall and sighed helplessly. After explaining the origin of the city wall's name, the girl immediately jumped in front of the leader and shouted excitedly, "Hey, uncle, quickly calculate how much money we've earned this time." Perhaps it was because they had arrived at a safe place. Alger, who had always kept a straight face, smiled and stroked the thick beard on his chin. There's no need to calculate. All the accounts are in my head. Confirming the location of the ruins is 200 gold coins. Drawing a rough map is 60 gold coins. And adding the 300 silver coins and 5,000 copper coins that Mr. Mage gave us, each of us will get 52 gold coins, 60 silver coins, and 1,000 copper coins. We can rest well for a few days. Hooray! Sure enough, the more dangerous the mission, the higher the reward. Alexia waved her fist and shouted like a crazy girl. Hee hee, after I get the money, I have to find a place to have a drink. This mission is too dangerous. I need to calm myself down, Steve said as he licked his dry lips. Alexia glanced at her teammate and curled her lips in disdain. Oomph. You must be addicted to alcohol again. Be careful that you don't meet a pickpocket when you're drunk. Then, half a month of hard work will be taken advantage of. It's okay, I'll accompany him. Big Charlie stood out and smiled. Watch him closely. I don't want to be yelled at by Steve's mother. Do you still remember what happened after he lost the money last time? Remember, if necessary, I allow you to knock him out and drag him home, Alger said as he glared at Steve threateningly. Cha Li Xiong raised his sandbag-sized fist and waved it without thinking. Understood. If he dares to get drunk, I'll knock him out. After hearing the conversation between the two, Steve covered his face and wailed. He knew Big Charlie's personality very well. He always obeyed the leader's orders. It seemed like his plan to drink to his heart's content had to be put on hold. No one was willing to be punched for no reason. Looking at the scene of his teammates laughing and scolding, Bill smiled and silently returned magic enlightenment to the young man. He said in a very low voice, "Thank you. I know you've already memorized the contents of this book. Be careful. Before you fully understand the meaning of every sentence, don't try it because it's not much different from suicide. You definitely don't want to blow up your own head before killing your enemy, right?" Andre warned softly after taking the book. "Don't worry, I won't try it within half a year." Bill clenched his fists and promised. He had already obtained the key to the magic world. Now, he needed to accumulate and settle down, slowly find the path until he found the right opportunity to open that door. Just as the two of them were talking, the team passed through the moat and arrived at the city gate. A team of armored soldiers were guarding the gate with swords in their hands. Everyone who entered the city would consciously throw 5 copper coins into the basket beside them. Andre was a little curious. He turned his head and asked Alger, "What does that mean? Some kind of tax?" "That's right. Everyone who enters the city has to pay the entrance tax." "Don't you have it where you live?" Alger asked, scratching his head. "I don't know. I've always lived in a remote place with my mentor to learn magic. I've never seen what a big city looks like." Andre explained half-truthfully as he rummaged through his backpack, wanting to take out a gold coin to pay the entrance tax. He had no choice. It wasn't that he wanted to be a spendthrift. It was just that he didn't have any other currency other than gold coins. But before the gold coin could be thrown into the basket, Alger hurriedly stopped the young man's actions and shouted at the guards, "He's a mage. He doesn't need to pay the entrance tax." "Mage?" After hearing the word, the guards immediately retracted their greedy gazes and looked at Andre in shock, a nervous expression on their faces. "Proof. I need proof. You know the rules." "You mean you need me to cast an arcane spell?" Andre frowned and asked uncertainly. He had never been in a situation like this before, so he didn't know what the so-called proof meant. The guard gulped and explained, "That's right, Sir Mage. You only need a low-level spell to prove that you're an arcane spell user." "I see." As soon as he finished speaking, Andre suddenly raised his hand and uttered a strange syllable. Chapter 43. In an instant, 2 glowing missiles flew out from between his fingers, accurately hitting the hardwood table beside him. They were like 2 bullets, piercing through it and leaving 2 charred holes in it. The rank 1 arcane spell, Magic Missile, was one of the fastest spells to cast, even faster than some rank 0 arcane spells. It was also very powerful, comparable to firearms like pistols. Whoosh! The people who had been queuing up to enter the city quickly retreated, leaving a large, empty space. Each of them had a look of awe. As for the guard, his legs were about to lose their balance. Beads of sweat were dripping down from his forehead along his cheeks. He made a 90-degree bow and said with a trembling voice, My apologies, Honorable Mage. Please forgive my unintentional offense. You and your companions may enter." "Really? Don't they have to pay the entrance tax?" Andre was confused. He didn't know what this guard was afraid of. Was it necessary to make him look like a murderous demon king? "Of course. I promise that you and your friends will never have to pay the entrance tax again," the guard replied, trembling all over. Seeing the wet marks on the inside of the guard's trousers, Andre's mouth twitched slightly, and he walked straight through the city gate. He couldn't believe that someone had actually been scared to the point of wetting their pants in front of so many people. Just as he was filled with questions, he suddenly heard a burst of laughter behind him. "Ha ha 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 ha! Did you see the water stains on that bastard's trousers? He actually wet his pants. Serves him right. Who told him to take advantage of us every time? It's only 5 copper coins, but he took 5 silver coins. I think he won't have the face to stay here in the future. After all, he wet his pants in front of so many people. If it were me, I wouldn't even leave my house." After hearing these words, Andre finally understood what was going on. He had been used by Alger to intimidate a guard who was secretly cheating for personal gain. No wonder he was so afraid. He was afraid of revenge. Bill saw the youth's gloomy expression and leaned forward to say in a low voice, "Now do you feel the status of a mage in this city?" "Yes, I feel it. I just want to ask, what would have happened if I had killed that soldier just now?" Andre took a deep breath and asked softly, "Consequences? As long as you're willing to join the Mage Association, there won't be any consequences. This city relies on the power of the mages, and at the same time, is controlled by the mages. The authority they control is even comparable to that of the nobles." Bill's eyes revealed a trace of gloominess as he lowered his head and walked forward silently. Andre looked at the spacious and lively street in front of him. He narrowed his eyes and muttered softly, "How interesting. A city where mages reign supreme, a city where trade flourishes, and also a city where corruption is rampant. I hope this place won't disappoint me." "Don't worry, it will not disappoint you. Here, mages are even nobler than nobles. I believe you saw the reaction of the guard at the door. What do you think? Do you want me to be your guide and take you around the city?" Alexia put her hands on her waist and assumed the posture of a hostess, especially the two plump peaks in front of her, which could be felt even through the leather armor. Beautiful women were always pleasing to the eye, not to mention that Andre was new here and needed a guide. He put one hand on his chest and bowed slightly. "It is my pleasure to have such a beautiful lady accompany me." "Uh-huh, I like this tone, but you have to wait for another 10 minutes. We have to turn in the mission first." Alexia was like an elf after she finished speaking, humming an unknown tune as she skipped to the front of the group, looking so energetic. Just as Andre safely entered Linton City, an army of elites was digging in the collapsed ruins. One of them, a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance, was holding a gorgeous long sword inlaid with countless gems. He frowned and asked the old man standing beside him, "Master Domi, how long will it take to dig out a passage?" "Please don't be anxious, Your Majesty. Wait patiently for a while. I have already had the palace mages completely seal off the possibility of teleportation. No matter what is down there, it will not be able to escape your control." The old man stroked his white hair and solemnly promised. The middle-aged man who was addressed as Your Majesty was none other than the current king of the Canteru Kingdom, Elroy Clow. He had a complicated expression as he sighed and asked, "Master Domi, you are the most outstanding mage of the Canteru Kingdom in the past 70 years. May I ask how likely is it that Ulysses Domer is hiding down there?" "Very likely. You saw the corpse of that monster when you came up. Only the best necromancers can fuse the characteristics of two creatures together. In the north, I'm afraid no other necromancer can do this apart from Ulysses. Even I can't do it." Domi's old face revealed a trace of admiration after he finished speaking. Although he loathed Ulysses' wanton slaughter of civilians and was determined to get rid of this scourge, he unabashedly admitted that he was inferior to Ulysses in terms of learning. "All right, looks like the hatred that has lasted for several generations will finally end in my hands. The royal family will no longer have to worry about a twisted monster waiting in the dark." Before Elroy could finish his words, he heard a loud bang. Then, a fully armed knight rushed out of the cave and shouted, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, we've dug through. There is indeed a huge basement inside." Elroy immediately became excited when he heard this news. He waved his hand, "Search. Search thoroughly immediately. Don't even let a fly go." "Yes, Your Majesty. However, there's one more thing that I have to tell you." Knight Serena rushed into the tunnel as soon as the tunnel was dug through. She was so fast that we couldn't stop her. The knight lowered his head in shame as he spoke. "Send someone to follow her. Also, find that young man called Andre as soon as possible. They are both meritorious subjects of the kingdom. I won't allow any accidents to happen at this time. Do you understand?" Elroy reprimanded in an extremely strict tone. As the king, he knew very well that he had to protect the two people involved. Otherwise, if one of them were to unfortunately die, the streets and alleys would soon begin to circulate that the royal family was cruel and ungrateful, unwilling to part with land, wealth, and noble titles, and had deliberately caused the death of meritorious subjects. Chapter 44. Once such rumors spread, it would be a huge blow to the royal family's reputation, and the consequences would be irreversible for generations to come. Back then, when Victor III issued an irrevocable arrest warrant, he made a solemn vow in front of countless subjects. As his descendant, if Elroy couldn't fulfill his promise, no one would be willing to serve the royal family in the future. Soon, under the strong interference of the king, a large number of feudal knights marched into the collapsed underground. The court mages followed closely behind, looking nervous at the slightest movement. But it was no wonder. The necromancer Ulysses Domer was too famous in the Cantero kingdom. Many people here grew up listening to his horror stories, and it was inevitable that they would have some psychological trauma. As the entire underground area was almost completely buried by a large amount of stones and mud, the cleaning and exploration work was very slow. After more than 2 hours, the knights finally came out with a broken body that had not yet decomposed and a wounded bat. Seeing this situation, King Elroy frowned slightly and asked, "Who is that body? And what's with that bat?" The leading knight bowed respectfully and replied, "Your Majesty, according to the court mage's speculation, this body is Ulysses Domer, and that bat is his magic pet. In addition, we also found a large number of human corpses. Some have been dead for a long time, and some were buried alive by the recent collapse." "What? Ulysses is dead? How is this possible?" Elroy was so shocked that he couldn't care less about his manners and cried out involuntarily, "Your Majesty, please calm down. That bat is still alive. I just need to read its memory, and we will know." While speaking, Damit's hand suddenly released a strong white light, and he gently pressed it on the head of the bat. Instantly, scenes appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. From the beginning of self-rescue, to learning Arcana, to becoming a mage, to the end of the battle of wits with Ulysses, to using that powerful bomb to blow the necromancer to death, and then causing a large-scale collapse. Everything that Andre had done was shown. The king was stunned. He couldn't believe that the necromancer who caused the Bloody New Year incident and had been entangled with the royal family for generations was really dead. The knights were stunned. Ulysses' sinister and evil spell and the explosion created by Andre made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Court Great Wizard Domite was so shocked that he was speechless. If it wasn't for the fact that magic couldn't lie, he wouldn't have believed that there was someone in this world who could become a mage just by self-studying. What was even more terrifying was that this young man with fiery red hair had not only succeeded, but he had also planned an attack. Although he looked a little miserable in the end, at least after analyzing the difference in strength between the two sides, it was already a miracle that he had been able to win. As the image gradually turned blurry, Damit's eyes revealed undisguised admiration. At the same time, he sighed softly, "Genius. A true genius. Find him. We must find him at all costs." "Master, do you mean that the young man named Andre isn't dead?" Elroy, who had just recovered from a shock, immediately asked. "Died? Ha ha." Domite suddenly laughed as if he had heard a funny joke. He pointed at the naked body and asked the knight in charge of the search, "Did you find any magic books near the body? Did you find the boy's body? Did you find any magical items or boxes containing scrolls?" The leading knight thought for a few minutes, and then shook his head lightly. "No. Fiery red hair is very rare. If we had found it, we would have remembered it clearly." After getting the answer he wanted, Domite turned to the king and spread out his hands. "Look, your Majesty. He has undoubtedly escaped. A collapse might be a disaster for a normal person, but it's easy for a mage to escape. Ulysses must have a box containing magic scrolls with him. Most high-ranked mages would prepare some in advance just in case. If this thing is missing, it means that the young man used one of the magic scrolls to escape." Elroy wasn't stupid at all. He immediately finished the second half of the sentence, and then ordered the knights beside him loudly, "Quick, go and invite Knight Serena here." "Yes, your Majesty." All the knights saluted with their swords in unison and turned to enter the cave once more. 5 minutes later, a female knight with a dull expression slowly walked out of the cave and came before the king and court great wizard. She didn't salute or greet them. She just stood there blankly, as if she had lost her soul. The old Domite only needed one glance to understand what was going on. After all, there were many scenes of the two of them caressing and kissing each other. Thus, he only said one sentence, "Andre is still alive." Serena's gray eyes instantly regained their color. She grabbed the old man's hand and asked excitedly, "What? Where is he? Tell me. Don't be so agitated. To be honest, we don't know what's going on with Andre." What we can be sure of is that he used a spell to leave after the collapse and found a place. Domite comforted and explained, and finally calmed the female knight down. He knew that this woman who seemed to be deeply in love was the only clue to find Andre. Based on the intimate relationship between the two of them, the young man would come back to find his beloved one day. Seeing that the female knight's expression had returned to normal, Elroy immediately asked tentatively, "Serena, do you know who else is in Andre's family?" According to the royal family's promise, he will receive a county's land and the title of baron. If he's not around, his family can receive it on his behalf. Andre's family is in Lone Mountain Village. As far as I know, he has parents, brothers, sisters, and a young sister. But now I have the same qualifications. Serena gently stroked her belly under the armor, and a faint blush appeared on her face. The king immediately understood the meaning of this action and immediately exclaimed, "You're pregnant with Andre's child?" Serena smiled and nodded. "Yes, I only found out recently that I'm going to be a mother. Perhaps when the child is born next year, his father will rush back from a faraway place." Chapter 45. That's great news. In that case, you will receive the title and land on Andre's behalf. After all, the child in your belly is his direct blood relative, which completely meets the requirements of the aristocratic inheritance law. After saying that, Elroy took out a piece of parchment from his chest. This is the land commission of the North County. Baron Iverson has just lost his best son, so he wants to leave this sad place. I have transferred him to the south. From now on, you are the mistress of this land. As for the conferring ceremony, it will be held when we return to the capital. Thank you for your generosity. I will protect this territory on behalf of Andre and take care of his family. Serena knelt on one knee and gave a standard salute. Ever since she knew that Andre was not dead, the female knight had become a new person. She knew how outstanding the young man's wisdom was, so she firmly believed that he would come back to find her soon. After the salute, Serena quickly retreated into the cave. She needed a relatively warm environment, as she was pregnant. As soon as the female knight left, the king immediately asked the old man beside him, "Master, are you sure this is enough?" "Of course, your majesty. Believe me, when this genius young man returns, he will definitely offer you his sincerest thanks. As long as we seize the opportunity, the Canteru kingdom is likely to welcome a mage who is far more talented than Ulysses Domer. His future is simply limitless. More importantly, he must have taken away Ulysses' spellbook. There are extremely evil and powerful spells recorded there, if we can master them." As the howling cold wind became stronger and stronger, it completely covered the voices of the two people. Andre, who was hundreds of kilometers away, did not know that Serena was pregnant with his child. He was touring around with the enthusiastic Alexia, admiring the prosperity and hustle of the southern coastal city. After the leader Alger received the commission from the client, he immediately distributed the money to his companions and disbanded on the spot. From then on, the two of them ran from the north to the south of the city. First, they went to the bazaar with a wide variety of goods. Then, they went to look at the huge sailboats and port in the dock area. Finally, they came to the shrine of the goddess of dawn, Lucia. As he gazed at the majestic building made of white marble, Andre could sense the immense power contained within. It was an energy that was fundamentally different from arcane spells, but also somewhat similar. Just getting close to it would make one want to prostrate themselves in worship. Through the understanding he had read in books, he knew that this was divine power, a power that belonged to the true gods. In the land of Oraire, there were all kinds of gods. Some were evil, some were kind, some advocated order, some advocated chaos, and some believed that both sides were wrong and that neutrality was the only right path. They saw each other as their enemies, fighting and scheming against each other. Mortals were also affected, fighting and killing on the ground. 600 years ago, more than 90% of the gods had an unprecedented conflict for unknown reasons, which directly led to the death of millions of mortals. The earth was severely damaged. Forests became deserts, land sank into the sea, mountains became lakes, and so on. Even the gods died in large numbers in the fierce battle, which eventually led to the wrath of the king of the gods in the world, the god of gods. This unknown, powerful god blocked the connection between the world of the gods and the mortal world. So now the gods could only rely on their priests and believers to interfere in the mortal world. The shrine was the place where they communicated with their priests and believers. The goddess of dawn, Lucia, was a very kind goddess. Her teachings mainly promoted healthy exercise, positive and optimistic spirit, women's personal freedom, and the pursuit of light, and so on. Most of the priests were naive young girls and mature women who had always been kind-hearted. Hey, you've been standing here for half a day. Don't tell me you're fascinated by the statue of the goddess? Alexia laughed and teased. Andre shrugged and smiled helplessly. No, I'm just wondering if the shrine can really cure my cough. You have to know that this has been an old problem for 3 years. Generally speaking, the longer it is delayed, the harder it is to recover. Well, don't think too much. The priests are the experts in this field. Come with me. Alexia didn't say anything. She pulled the youth's arm and forcibly dragged him into the shrine. She went straight to a mature woman in her early 30s wearing a long robe and a ribbon in her hair. When the believers who came to donate or worship saw this scene, they covered their mouths and laughed. After all, most of them were girls in their 20s. This was the age when they were the most curious and gossipy. May I ask why the two of you have come to the shrine of the goddess? The female priest gently stroked her long brown hair and asked. Although her etiquette was almost impeccable, the slightly upturned corners of her mouth betrayed everything. Alexia quickly poked Andre's chest with her finger and quickly replied, "Good afternoon, respected lady. My friend here will cough violently whenever he exercises too much. It seems that he's caught a cold. I hope you can take a look." A cold. The female priest immediately shifted her gaze to the youth's face. After a few minutes of careful examination, a trace of understanding appeared on her face. It is indeed frostbite, and it has been for a long time. Andre was a little surprised to see that the other party was able to see through his body's illness so quickly. He then bowed politely. "Madam, may I ask if my illness can be cured?" The female priest didn't hesitate and immediately nodded. "Of course it can, but it will be a little troublesome. If you came here as soon as you got sick, then a level 0 divine, spell minor injury cure, would be able to cure you. But now it will take at least a level 3 divine spell disease removal and a level 2 divine spell moderate injury cure. They are quite expensive, and I need to make sure that you have the ability to pay." Please don't worry about this. My friend is a mage, so he can definitely pay for the treatment." Alexia didn't wait for the youth to speak before rushing to answer. The girl had done this many times along the way. She basically said this to everyone she met, as if she was afraid that others wouldn't know that she knew a mage. Andre only laughed at Alexia's desire to show off. But when it came to the treatment fee, he still asked cautiously, "May I ask how much it will cost?" According to the standard price of magic in Lincoln City, level 0 is 50 gold coins, level 1 is 100, level 2 is 200, level 3 is 400. You'll need to pay a total of 600 gold coins. The female priest didn't beat around the bush and directly gave an accurate price. In her opinion, since the other party was a mage, he would definitely be able to pay this amount. Chapter 46. Even though Andre was prepared for such a huge treatment fee, he couldn't help but inwardly gasp. He had a rough idea of the price of goods in Lincoln City from his visit to the market. Although it was slightly higher than in the Cantero Kingdom, the prices of food, meat, fruits, vegetables, linen, and other necessities were still maintained at a very low price. 600 gold coins was enough to buy a house and live comfortably for a few years. But now he had to spend it all for a single treatment. It was practically robbery. It was no wonder all the shrines looked so luxurious. According to the price, it wouldn't take long for him to gather enough money to build another one. However, Andre knew that in this backward world of medical technology, divine spells were the only way to treat himself. As the saying went, nothing was more important than health. Anyway, money was just a worldly possession. At worst, he could just spend it all and earn more later. After comforting himself, he opened his backpack and took out 2 bags of gold coins and placed them on the ground. He smiled bitterly at the priestess. "I'm sorry, madam. I just came from another place and only have a small amount of Alliance gold coins. Do you accept Cantero currency here?" Of course. Tourist gold coins can be exchanged for 5 Alliance gold coins. Calant gold coins are 1-to-1. The priestess was obviously very knowledgeable and quoted the price without hesitation. "Then there's no problem. I think this should be enough." As he spoke, Andre squatted down and quickly gathered enough money to pay for the treatment. He handed the bags over. The treatment this time had cost him close to 70% of his wealth. Now, there were less than 60 tourist gold coins and 1 Alliance gold coin left in the shriveled leather bag. It had to be said that the priestess of the goddess of dawn, Lucia, was quite good. After receiving the money, the mature woman in her 30s immediately began to pray. Following that, she cast 2 powerful divine spells through incantations and hand gestures. The discomfort in his lungs disappeared completely in the blink of an eye. "You are receiving divine treatment. Disease removed. Your status returned to health. Medium damage healed. Your HP has been restored to full." Looking at the string of messages that appeared on his retina, Andre finally heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that this old illness that had troubled him for many years was finally completely cured. After the treatment, the 2 of them thanked the priest and left the temple. According to their original plan, they went straight to the entrance of the Mage Association. This was a pagoda-shaped building with 9 floors. Its entire body was made of the toughest granite. There was not a single crack on the top of the pagoda. The top of the pagoda flickered with an intense, arcane radiance. Even during the day, it still looked extremely dazzling. Alexia pointed at the tower and explained, "Inside is the Mage Association. It is said that only true mages can find the entrance. Normal people will be killed by terrifying monsters if they approach, so I can only send you here." "Thank you. I think I can see the entrance. You can go back first. If you run into any trouble, remember to look for me." After saying that, Andre gave the girl a polite hug and walked towards the tower eagerly. When he was less than 30 meters away from the door, he seemed to have passed through an invisible wall and disappeared. Alexia, who had not gone far, saw this scene and opened her mouth wide. She almost cried out in surprise, but when she thought of the power and influence of the mages, she immediately covered her mouth and ran until she disappeared at the end of the street. At the same time, Andre, who had just passed through the camouflage barrier, saw a completely different scene from the one outside. There was actually a garden in front of the tower. There were all kinds of strange plants that competed with each other in terms of beauty. There was a man-eating flower with a huge mouth that constantly emitted a foul stench. There was a strange tree that was bare and looked a little creepy. There was also a vine that was constantly moving. Just as his attention was completely drawn over, the huge stone statue standing at the door suddenly spoke. "This is the Mage Association of Lincoln City. Please state your name and purpose, foreign mage." Andre was startled and quickly took a few steps back. He then carefully observed his surroundings. After confirming that there was no one else around, he replied loudly, "My name is Andre. I am here to become a member. Please come in. The Association of Mages welcomes anyone who comes with good intentions. I hope you can find what you are looking for here. The president, Mage Boris, is in the first room on the left in the hall on the first floor. Please go directly to him to complete the formalities." After saying that, the huge statue's eyes lit up slightly. It moved a step to the side and revealed the entrance to the tower. Staring at this incredible scene, Andre's heart was filled with amazement. The mysterious world of magic made him feel like he was in a dream. Just like what was mentioned in magic, enlightenment. In this world, there was nothing you could not imagine, but there was nothing magic could not do. Especially the statue that could talk. It was definitely not as simple as an ordinary puppet. It had intelligence and could tell who was who. It was just like the artificial intelligence in the movies back on Earth. With the desire to explore magic, he took a deep breath and walked past the statue, gradually disappearing into the tower. The gentle magical light, the fragrant scent of flowers, the neatly arranged round tables and chairs. 7 or 8 people wearing long robes sat scattered around. They looked to be over 30 years old. Some of them even had white hair. They sat together in a circle, discussing something in low voices. There were also some boys and girls who looked to be between 9 and 14 years old, standing silently at the side with their heads lowered. They looked to be either servants or apprentices. There were no strange devices or bloody corpses. Everything looked so ordinary. It was completely different from the gathering place of mages in Andre's mind. Perhaps it was the evil nature of the necromancers and their sinister experiments that gave him too much psychological trauma. Subconsciously, he always thought that mages should be similar to those mad scientists in the movies. Not only were they eccentric and cruel, but they should also be slovenly. They should be unkempt and dirty, and their eyes should be as if they had not slept for days. But the scene in front of him subverted the image of a mage that he had built up. Most of the people here were polite, and even their voices were very low. They were afraid to disturb others. But obviously, now was not the time to dwell on this. Andre quickly scanned the hall and quickly found the room that the statue outside mentioned. He bowed slightly to the people who were looking at him curiously, and turned to open the door and walked in. As soon as he closed the door, the whole hall burst into an uproar. Chapter 47. Hey, did you see that just now? That kid isn't even an adult yet, but he's already an official mage. Arcana above. If not for the fact that the alchemy statue has never made a mistake, I would have personally tested his abilities. An average-looking man in a blue mage robe said excitedly. Another white-haired old man shook his head with a smile after hearing this. Calm down, Dick. There's no lack of geniuses in this world, so it's not strange to meet one or two occasionally. Moreover, from my observation just now, I found that the kid is not only an official mage, but also a level 2 arcane spell. You're definitely not his match. What? You mean to say that he's at least a level 3 mage? The man called Dick stood up from his chair in shock, his face full of disbelief. That's right, at least level 3, maybe even level 4. He must be the disciple of some great mage, and only someone who's been groomed since he was young can reach this level. Another woman in her 40s said with certainty. A fatty who looked funny suddenly thought of something, and suddenly stood up and shouted, "That's right. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a skull-shaped mark on the boy's forehead. Could have been branded by his mentor? That should be it. If I'm not wrong, it's definitely a secret imprint. Does that mean we're going to have another member? Looks like it. I really hope he could bring a few new arcane spells." For a moment, the mages in the hall were discussing animatedly, while the silent children all had their eyes shining. To them, an additional official mage meant an additional chance. Once they were apprenticed to an official mage, they could immediately get rid of their errand boy status and learn mysterious magic. Andre didn't know how big of a commotion his arrival had caused. He was standing obediently in front of a 2-meter-tall, fierce-looking old man who looked more like a bandit than a mage. He was the president of the Association of Mages, Master Boris. It had to be said that this image was a bit of a contrast to a normal mage, especially that pair of big, strong hands, densely packed with calluses, could completely strangle a person to death. After sizing up the youth for a long time, President Boris suddenly asked, "Child, what's your name? How old are you this year?" "Master, my name is Andre. I'm 14 years old this year." Andre bowed with one hand on his chest. He could feel the terrifying mana condensed on the body of this thuggish old man. It was like a huge vortex. Although it was not as huge as the dead Ulysses, he was definitely a powerhouse. 14 years old? Interesting, Boris muttered softly. He raised his head and continued to ask, "Are you here to join the Magic Association of Linton City?" Andre answered without hesitation, "Yes, I plan to stay in this city for a while to consolidate my knowledge and do some experiments. Therefore, joining the association is the best choice. Yes, no problem. We welcome every member who is willing to join us. But before that, I have to remind you that although the association does not restrict the personal freedom of mages, there are still some obligations that need to be fulfilled. At this point, Boris glanced at the youth's expression. He then put on his glasses and picked up a piece of parchment to read. First, you must complete a mission every month. The reward is generous. Of course, if you're in urgent need of money, you can accept more. There are no restrictions in this regard. Secondly, you must choose an apprentice from the association to be responsible for teaching. There are no restrictions on gender and age. During this period, you can order the apprentice around as a slave or use him for experiments. But it's best not to kill him. Lastly, if there's a war, then you must be prepared to go to war at any time. After listening to all the terms, Andre immediately frowned and asked, "War? Is there a lot of war here?" Boris put down the parchment in his hand, took off his glasses, and laughed. "Ha ha! On the contrary, there is rarely a real war here. Only patrol ships are often sent out to attack pirates. The so-called war mostly refers to naval battles, so you don't have to worry too much. Moreover, mages usually cast spells at the rear, where there is heavy protection. There is rarely any danger. So that's how it is." Andre had a thoughtful expression on his face. After thinking for a few seconds, he felt that there shouldn't be too much of a problem, so he nodded lightly. "No problem. I'm willing to fulfill the terms." After all, in Linton City, all the mages who lived here had joined the association, and there hadn't been any negative news for so many years. Apart from that, he also wanted to check if Gavin Lauren was as evil as Bill said. Since that's the case, I welcome you on behalf of the Mages Association. According to the rules, please immediately cast the highest level arcane spell you know, and then report your mage level. With that, Boris took a few steps back, giving the youth enough space to cast the spell. Andre didn't expect there to be such a rule. He was stunned for a moment, but then he began to chant an incantation. His 10 nimble fingers danced quickly, and in the blink of an eye, he completely disappeared without a trace. Clap, 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 clap. Boris applauded as he smiled at the air in front of him. What a wonderful invisibility spell. Looks like you've already mastered a level 2 arcane spell. Tell me, are you a level 3 or 4 mage? What about your specialization? Level 4. As for my specialization, I haven't decided yet. Following this reply, Andre's figure slowly appeared. Although the spell allowed him to hide, the weakness was that he couldn't speak or make any offensive movements, or else he would be immediately exposed. A 14-year-old level 4 mage. I'm more and more curious about who your mentor is. If it's convenient, can you reveal a little? Boris narrowed his eyes and asked tentatively. In his eyes, to be able to cultivate such a young official mage, his mentor must be very powerful. Perhaps he was from some hidden magical family, holding large amounts of ancient literature and lost arcane spells. He was very valuable. Andre felt a strong sense of ambition from the other party, so he pretended to be in a difficult position. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. My teacher doesn't allow me to mention his name outside." Chapter 48. Seeing that he couldn't get any useful information, Boris sighed regretfully. He took out a sapphire badge with a tower engraved on it and tossed it to the youth. "All right, I knew it would be like this. Also, this is your badge for ordinary members. It's a magical item, and when you wear it, you can remember an additional level 2 spell. Now, you can go to the hall and get to know the others and pick an apprentice. Remember, don't kill them by accident. Don't worry, I don't like human experiments." After saying this, Andre bowed politely and pinned the sapphire badge to his chest. He then turned and left the room. Even though he had to take on some responsibilities, he still gained a lot of benefits. The first was the association's large amount of resources and arcane scrolls, which could be bought with money. The second point was that every member could use the public facilities in the tower, such as alchemy rooms, workbenches, furnaces, and so on. Every month, there would be a certain amount of energy allocation, which could be used for experiments and making magic items. The third was judicial immunity. No matter what law was broken, only the association could deal with it. The patrolling guards had no right to interfere. The fourth was that every mage had a tax exemption of 1,000 gold coins every month. Whether it was doing business, selling magical items, or selling potions, it was all included. As long as the tax didn't exceed this amount, it was exempt. If it did, it would be deducted. It had to be said that the mages of Linton City were living in heaven. No wonder Bill said that mages had as much power as nobles. It seemed that the rumors were true. As a direct beneficiary, Andre felt that he could stay here for a few more days, especially since he still didn't have a complete understanding of some of the basic knowledge. After all, Ulysses was already dead, and there was nothing to do if he returned to the Canteru kingdom too early. He might as well raise his strength in this resource-rich place. As soon as he arrived in the hall, everyone's gaze fell on the badge on the youth's chest. The dazzling sapphire clearly told everyone that he was not only an official mage, but also a level 2 arcane spell. Apart from a few members who looked stronger, the rest all sucked in a breath of cold air, unable to hide the shock on their faces. Although they had already guessed most of it, they still couldn't help but be shocked when their prediction came true. Looking at the ages of the official magicians, even the youngest one was between 30 to 40 years old, while most of the others were over 40 years old. It was obvious how difficult it was to become an official magician. Considering that there were only 60 people registered in the Magicians Association, it was a pitiful number for a city with a population of over 100,000. As a time traveler who knew the ways of the world, Andre immediately took 2 steps forward, bowed politely, and introduced himself. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andre. From today onwards, I will be an official member of this place." He was very clear that he had to be humble and courteous at times like this. Otherwise, he would easily be isolated by these old fellows just because of his age. Perhaps it was Andre's humility and politeness that worked, or perhaps it was because these mages were not as bad as he thought. But after 10 minutes, everyone was able to sit together and laugh, talking about topics that did not involve personal privacy, especially about magic research. "Magician Andre, may I ask where your hometown is?" After more than 10 minutes of nonsense, a magician in his 50s began to test the youth's background. Not only him, but everyone present revealed curiosity in their eyes. After all, a 14-year-old official magician was too eye-catching. It could be said that both talent and guidance were indispensable, and the person in charge of teaching was at least a knowledgeable great magician who was above level 12. Although the speed of information transmission in this world was very slow, a powerhouse like this could still more or less spread some reputation. So as long as they inquired about the name of the specific country and city, they could immediately infer who this great magician was. But it was a pity that Andre's mentor was the infamous necromancer, Ulysses Domer, so he definitely couldn't tell the truth. He pretended to be reserved and replied with a smile, "I come from the far north. As for the specific country, I won't say. My mentor doesn't allow me to mention his name outside, so please forgive me." It was a perfect excuse. Almost no one could tell whether the sentence was true or not. Even President Boris was fooled, let alone a group of ordinary members in front of him. The magicians who didn't get any information were quite unwilling to give up. In the next half an hour, they took turns to bombard the youth with questions, trying to get some useful information by beating around the bush. Andre carefully dealt with these people who seemed to have ulterior motives. He tried his best not to mention any names of places, environmental characteristics, and social situations to prevent them from guessing the location of the Canteru kingdom. He didn't intend to let anyone know where he came from, and he also didn't want anyone to know about the unbearable days when he was under the necromancer's control. Seeing that the youth answered appropriately, but didn't leak any information, the magicians understood the meaning even if they were stupid. They stopped probing and began to talk about more relaxed and pleasant topics. In fact, no one who could become a magician was an idiot. Arcana required a very high level of logical thinking, reasoning, learning ability, abstract thinking, and so on. Those who weren't smart enough were completely eliminated when they were still apprentices. Therefore, those who could become a magician were all elites. They understood that the youth didn't want anyone to pry into his privacy, so they gave up on this idea. As time passed, Andre was getting more and more annoyed with the magician's idle time. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He stood up and bowed slightly. My apologies. Although I've enjoyed chatting with all of you, I have to quickly choose an apprentice and find a place to live in the city. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the magician tower suddenly opened. A man in his 40s with a hooked nose, short black hair, and sharp eyes walked in. He glanced at everyone present with disdain, opened his arms, and sneered loudly. "Ha ha! It's you cowards again. You only know how to do experiments and chat in a magician tower all day. Once there's a battle, you panic. If I were you, I would have killed myself out of shame." Chapter 49. Gavin Lauren. Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you've won a few magic duels. This is the Association of Mages. This is not your private playground. A gray-haired old man stood up and scolded back without backing down. "Ha ha ha! Old man, are you tired of living? Do you want to have a magic duel with me outside right now? I promise I'll twist your moldy head off in 5 minutes." The man called Gavin Lauren directly issued a challenge. From the cruel smile on his face, it was definitely not a joke. The old man was obviously not someone easy to deal with. He grabbed the hardwood cane on the table and slowly stood up. The other mages around him also stood up, and their eyes were quite scary. Gavin snapped his fingers without fear. In an instant, 5 or 6 of his companions rushed in from outside the mage tower. The two sides quickly entered a state of confrontation. A little carelessness could lead to a large-scale battle. Andre, who had just arrived, did not understand what was going on. Why were they all fine just now? And in the blink of an eye, they started to fight among themselves. In order not to be affected, he carefully retreated to the side and silently observed the executioner that Bill described, Gavin Lauren. Obviously, it was this person who rushed in and ridiculed them for no reason that caused the situation in front of them. From his words and the tyrannical aura he exuded, his hands were definitely stained with blood. He gave people a feeling of arrogance and despotism, which was very unpleasant. Just when the battle was about to start, the door on the left side was suddenly kicked open. Boris walked out and roared at everyone, "What are you doing? Tell me, what are you trying to do?" After roaring, he came in front of Gavin and asked with a grim smile, "You like magic duels, right? Come on, I'll accompany you. Together." Gavin, who was still majestic just a moment ago, instantly withered. He lowered his head like a child who made a mistake and did not even dare to breathe loudly. The few guys behind him were even worse. Their legs were slightly trembling. After reprimanding one side, the president immediately turned his spearhead to the other side. "You guys are also very promising. You actually want to swarm up like street hooligans? Where's your dignity? Tell me, where is your dignity as a mage? That was great. Making a scene in front of a new member. Get lost. All of you scram." The furious Boris was brimming with terrifying magic power, and the expression on his face was even more chilling. No one in the room dared to stay. Soon, they all left, leaving only Andre and a group of apprentices and servants who didn't know what to do. Just like the saying goes, where there are people, there will be fights, not to mention the powerful mages. Without a doubt, although there were only 60 registered members in the Sorcerer Association, they were divided into 2 factions. The tense atmosphere just now was the best example. If it wasn't for the president's suppression, they would have fought to the death without hesitation. All right, don't just stand there like a fool. Hurry up and pick an acolyte while these bastards aren't here. Then, go and find a place to stay. Remember, try not to get involved in their fight. It won't do you any good. After saying that, Boris didn't care if the young boy listened or not. He waved his hand and returned to the room, closing the door with a bang. Seeing that the big show had finally come to an end, Andre smiled helplessly. He turned around and began to look at the group of children between the ages of 9 and 14. He was ready to pick a prettier little lowly to play with and raise. Anyway, he couldn't tell who had better talent and who didn't. Fortunately, he picked a prettier one. At least it would make him feel better. As for the president's warning, he didn't care at all. He only wanted to investigate whether Gavin Lauren was really an evil person. If it was true, then he would find a chance to get rid of him. That was all. In order to change their fate, the apprentices and servants all puffed out their chests and showed their best side, especially the girls who were 12 years old and above. They purposely pulled their necklines low, showing off their breasts that were just starting to develop. They wanted to use this to get a better chance. Although they were very young, their intelligence was outstanding. They already understood what it meant to be a disciple of an official mage. Even if they could only become an apprentice who could only use rank 0 arcane spells, they could still live a luxurious life. Mr. Mage, please choose me. I can do anything. Choose me. I can satisfy any of your requests. Choose me, mister. I'm very familiar with all the streets and alleys in the city. Staring at the faces full of anticipation, Andre was a little hesitant. These children were too scheming. Seeing a group of girls who weren't even 15 years old putting on a seductive posture, anyone with a moral bottom line would feel uncomfortable. At this moment, he suddenly saw a little girl who wasn't even 10 years old standing in the corner. She stared at him curiously with a pair of large blue eyes. She didn't recommend herself like the other children, nor did she take the initiative to expose her body. There was a saying that the eyes were the windows to the soul. Andre could see the pure curiosity in the girl's eyes. She also looked very sweet and cute. With her long golden hair, she looked like a cute little elf. Without any hesitation, he stepped forward and asked with a smile, "My name is Andre. What's your name?" "Beverly." The little lowly softly said her name. However, she was obviously a little shy. She lowered her head and played with the corner of her skirt, not daring to raise her head. "What a beautiful name. Tell me, why did you come to the Mage Tower?" Andre continued to ask as he stroked the girl's long hair. "Because my mother said that she couldn't raise my brother and I, and that we could eat our fill here, so I was sent here." Beverly used a very normal tone to tell the tragic truth. Perhaps in her young heart, she didn't understand the pain of being separated from her mother. Perhaps this was a normal thing in Lincoln City. In any case, Andre felt a trace of pity for the girl after hearing the truth. He gently cupped the little lowly's delicate face and asked very seriously, "Beverly, are you willing to be my apprentice? Think carefully before you answer, because once you agree, you must strictly obey my orders. You can't violate any of them, because the path of magic is very difficult and also very dangerous." After becoming an apprentice, can I have meat for every meal?" The girl held her chin for a long time and finally asked a question that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. "Of course, I can guarantee that you have meat for every meal, and you can eat as much as you want. Come, let me go eat something first, and then I'll take you home to have a look." After saying that, Andre took the little lowly's hand and walked out of the Mage Tower, leaving behind a group of servants and apprentices who were sighing. Chapter 50. When he returned to the streets, Andre was surprised to find that the sun was about to set. After a busy day, people had finished their work and were returning home in droves. There were also some who went straight to the taverns or restaurants to satisfy their appetites. Looking at the bustling city, he shook his head with a smile and asked the girl beside him, "Tell me, what do you want to eat tonight? You live here, so you should be most familiar with which restaurant has the best food." "Really? I can make the decision?" Beverly opened her eyes wide, and her face was full of surprise and disbelief. "Of course. Hurry up and lead the way. I'm starving." As soon as Andre finished speaking, his stomach made a rumbling sound. From noon until now, he had only eaten the so-called seafood chowder soup and a small piece of bread in the market, which had been digested a few hours ago. It would be strange if he was not hungry. Hee. Well, follow me. The meat pies and onion soup in Uncle Jason's restaurant are the best. Then the little girl took the lead and ran into an alley. After leaving the Association of Mages, she had obviously become more lively. and her suppressed nature had been revived. Andre felt a little relieved. Although he could not liberate all the children from the twisted and morbid environment in the tower, at least he could save the soul of a girl. The two walked through more than a dozen streets and alleys, and finally stopped in front of a restaurant that was not very big but smelled very good. There was a half-meter-long wooden sign above their head that read, Jason's Restaurant. 30-years-old restaurant, reputation guaranteed. Beverly wrinkled her little nose and took a deep breath. Then she licked her lips and sighed. It hasn't changed at all. It still smells so good. The little girl's cuteness made Andre laugh. He touched the girl's hair and teased. What are you waiting for? Go find a seat and order some of your best dishes. I feel so hungry now that I can eat a cow. No problem. Minter, I'll go get a seat. After saying that, Beverly lifted her linen dress and rushed in. Without saying anything, she sat at the seat closest to the window. Her action immediately attracted the attention of many people, especially the waitress who was in charge of serving the food. She was surprised and shouted, Beverly, oh my God, it's really you. Didn't Aunt Elsa sell you to the Sorcerers Association? The little lowly proudly shook her head and replied, now that I have a teacher, of course I can come out. Look, he's here. Following the direction of her finger, everyone raised their heads and looked at the entrance. They saw a red-haired young man wearing a long robe slowly walking in. The badge on his chest, emitting a dark blue luster, instantly silenced the restaurant. In Linton, a city-state where mages reign supreme, no one would not know what that meant. An official member of the Sorcerers Association, a spellcaster who wielded powerful supernatural powers, was more revered by the commoners than by the nobles. Voila! The diners hurriedly put down the tableware in their hands and stood up to bow, fearing that they would be killed if they were too slow. Their eyes were filled with fear, and some of them couldn't help but tremble. They didn't even realize that they had touched the soup bowl. Seeing this, Andre couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He knew that these commoners did not respect him, but they were afraid of the power and authority that the mages possessed. They were afraid of judicial immunity. Honorable Sir Mage, what would you like to eat? The waitress walked up and asked politely. Ask her. I'm only responsible for paying. Henry said as he pointed at the little lowly who was sitting on the chair. Without waiting for the waitress to turn around, Beverly immediately shouted, 2 portions of onion soup, 6 pieces of meat patties. All right, please wait a moment. The waitress immediately pretended to note it down and then ran into the kitchen like a wisp of smoke. It seemed like she was going to inform a boss. Andre didn't care about these trivial matters and directly sat down beside the girl, admiring the scenery outside the window while waiting for the dishes to be served. To be honest, he didn't have high expectations for this small restaurant located in the slums. After all, there were not many condiments in this world, and even the salt contained a lot of impurities. Who knew what chemicals were in it? It was already good enough that he could swallow it. Other than that, there was nothing else he could ask for. Sometimes, he even wondered if he had lived in Lonely Mountain Town for too long, causing his taste buds to be completely destroyed by the terrible taste of food. Otherwise, how could he even eat something so difficult to swallow? After only a few minutes, an old man wearing an apron came out of the kitchen with 2 bowls of soup and 6 pieces of meat patties. He didn't care about the customers who came first, and directly placed the food in front of the young man and respectfully bowed. Good evening, Honorable Sir Mage. I am the owner and chef of this restaurant, Jason. These are the things you ordered. Please enjoy. Thank you. Andre politely thanked him and immediately picked up the spoon to take a sip of the soup. The taste was not bad, and it wasn't as bad as he imagined. He didn't know what was in it, but there was a faint smell of fish. He raised his head and smiled at the uneasy boss and praised, Not bad. It's the best onion soup I've ever had. Thank you so much. I know you're a real gourmet at first sight. Jason excitedly waved his big hairy hand. Beverly's mouth was stuffed with meat patties, and she nodded desperately. I've said before, Uncle Jason's cooking is the best. Eat slowly. No one is fighting with you. Be careful not to choke. Andre lovingly stroked the girl's hair. The little lowly in front of him reminded him of his sister in Lonely Mountain Town. Both of them were equally clever, eccentric, and lively. Jason was obviously very familiar with Beverly and asked with a smile, "Little rascal, you haven't been here for a long time. How's life in the Mage Association?" The little lowly swallowed the food in her mouth and muttered in dissatisfaction, "Not bad. Although I'm not full, I'm not starving. It's just that those big kids always like to bully people and leave all the troublesome work to me. A bunch of bad guys." Hearing the girl's complaint, Jason stroked the thick beard on his chin and laughed. "Ha ha, I believe those big kids must be regretting it to death now, because you're already a real apprentice and they're still handymen. Mr. Mage, Beverly is already your apprentice, isn't she?" "That's right. I'll train her to be a real mage with all my heart, and not like the others who are just doing errands." Just as he finished this sentence, Andre suddenly found a large amount of information popping up in his retina. Chapter 51. Name, Beverly Apprentice. Race, human. Underage age, 9 years old. Alignment, chaotic good. Likes to do things according to her own wishes. Does not want to be bound by laws and regulations, but is still kind and willing to help others. Intimacy, 60. She has some respect and good feelings towards you. Please continue to work hard. Attributes, strength, 5 agility, 12 vitality, 6 intelligence, 15 perception, 9 charm, 10 profession, none health points, 2 halves healthy ability points, 0 attribute points, 0 inch you. Have gain an apprentice. Please nurture her into a talent. The higher the apprentice's achievements in the future, the more rewards you will receive. Obviously, these were the basic attributes of the little lowly. Although most of her attributes were terrible, her intelligence was surprisingly high. Beverly was not even 10 years old this year, which meant that she still had a lot of room for growth. As long as she was nurtured well, becoming an official mage was almost certain, and she could become a qualified assistant. What an enviable girl, but her brother is not so lucky. Old Jason touched his sparse hair and sighed. Andre heard a bad signal from this sentence and immediately frowned. What's the matter? Could it be that something has happened? Old Jason sighed helplessly. Sigh. 2 years ago, when Beverly was just sent to the hospital, her brother got a fatal case of tuberculosis. Elsa didn't have the money to take the child to see a priest. Finally, she could only watch him die of illness. Poor woman. First her husband died at a young age, then she lost her son. Fortunately, she still has a daughter. No, impossible. How could my brother die? The little lowly was stunned when she heard the bad news. She threw down the tableware and rushed out of the restaurant like a mad woman. Here, this is the money for the meal. Keep the change. Andre put the only small gold coin he had on him into the hands of the boss and quickly chased after her. Looking at his receding figure, old Jason muttered to himself, "Looks like Antonio and his gang are going to be unlucky. I hope they didn't harass Elsa tonight, or I'm afraid none of them will survive. Don't worry about those scum. All they do is loaf around and bully orphans and widows who don't have a man at home. It would be better if that mage just killed them all." A young man who was eating yelled angrily. Another middle-aged man echoed in a low voice, "That's right. These bastards are all dead. They even harassed my daughter 2 days ago. They deserve to be killed." Looking at the agitated crowd, old Jason smiled bitterly. "That's right, but have you considered that he's a mage? Once he gets angry and casts a powerful spell, there's a possibility that our street will be blown up. Think about the disaster a few years ago. 2 magicians fought each other and destroyed half a street. More than 200 people died. But that mage is still a child. He shouldn't be too strong, right?" The young man who spoke first asked in an uncertain tone. "It's hard to say. The great power that a mage possesses is not something that we can easily guess. I hope you're right, or else." Old Jason did not finish the second half of his sentence, but everyone present knew what he was talking about. In Linton City, magicians would often kill people, create chaos, and destroy buildings for various reasons, but none of them were actually killed or sent to prison. It was because of this that many members of the Association of Mages acted without restraint. They would kill people to vent their anger if things did not go their way. Only the great nobles who held the ruling position could make these fellows restrain themselves. Like many large cities, Linton City was divided into several districts for ease of management. For example, the Dock District, the Market District, the Administrative District, the Noble District, the City Gate District, the Cemetery District, and so on. Beverly's house was obviously a slum, especially with the dilapidated houses on both sides of the road and the shadows in the dark alleys. It was obvious that it was a dirty and messy place. Following behind the little lowly, Andre quickly arrived at an old two-story house. It could be seen that the owner of the house was very diligent. The steps in front of the door were wiped clean, and there was even a small garden with wooden fences on both sides. Some unknown white wildflowers swayed in the wind, emitting a faint fragrance. Just as he was about to step onto the steps, the little lowly's scream suddenly came from inside the house. "Get lost! Scum! Don't bully my mother!" "Beverly, why are you back?" "Forget it, hee. It's just nice for me to enjoy mother and daughter together." "Ha ha ha!" A man let out a lascivious laugh. "Boss Antonio, you really know how to enjoy yourself. Don't forget about our brothers later. These two women are so beautiful. I can't hold it in any longer." Another man with a wretched voice flattered. "Damn fatty, move aside. Let the boss go first, then we'll take turns. When we're done playing with them, we'll sell them to the brothel for gold coins." "Barton, you're so bad, but I like it. Hee hee." As their words became more and more obscene, a tearing sound came from inside the house, followed by a woman crying and shouting, "No, don't touch my daughter. She's not even 10 years old. 10 years old is not young. I like to destroy the tender seedlings." The man who was called Antonio replied shamelessly. Andre, who was standing at the door, more or less figured out the nature of these people. He pulled the crossbow open and put an arrow into the groove. He directly rushed in and aimed at the violent young man, pulling the trigger without mercy. Whoosh! With a piercing sound, the arrow fiercely pierced through the young man's chest. The huge force sent him flying and nailed him to the wall. He slightly twitched as he breathed his last. Hit the vital point. Fatal blow activated. Dealt 9 points of damage to Antonio. Target's heart destroyed. Dead. Received 5 experience points. As usual, a large number of data popped up on his retina, recording in detail the result of the attack just now. Although the experience points were a little less, it was still quite a lot for a little punk in his 20s. Shocking. The remaining 5 youths in the room were all stunned by the sudden massacre. Although this was a slum, there was still a small number of guards patrolling. At most, they would fight and would not dare to kill people. Otherwise, if they were caught, they would definitely be hanged. Chapter 52. After killing their leader, Andre swept his cold gaze across the youths. He then said in a low and sinister voice, "What do you want to do to my cute apprentice? How dare you? Anyone who spoke just now, step forward and cut off that thing of yours. Then I'll forgive you for what you've done. Otherwise," he purposely dragged out his words, his hands flickering with white lightning. The rank 0 arcane spell Tremor Shock was ready to be completed. His attitude was very clear. "Cut it off. Live. Not cut. Die." The 5 youths were dumbfounded. Their bodies shook like a sieve, and their teeth chattered. They were all scared out of their wits as they looked at each other. It was obvious that they didn't want to die, but they didn't want to cut off their manhood. As for resisting, he did not even dare to think about it. After repeated propaganda and brainwashing, the residents of this city were in awe of mages beyond imagination. Even an experienced adventurer like Alger was in awe of mages, let alone a few insignificant hooligans. "Move faster. Don't force me to kill." Seeing that they weren't moving for a long time, Andre frowned and urged loudly. Although killing could bring him valuable experience points, he wasn't willing to slaughter his own kind. In fact, he had only killed 2 people since he'd been brought into this world. One was the evil necromancer Ulysses, and the other was Antonio, who had just been nailed to the wall. As for Baron's son Byron, strictly speaking, it wasn't considered killing him. It was more like helping him to free himself from his pain. Andre was very clear that in this barbaric world, it was impossible to completely avoid being stained with the blood of his own kind. Thus, he only wanted to make sure that everyone he killed deserved it. He didn't want to be a good person or a saint, but he also didn't want to be a cold-blooded butcher. He wanted to help those who truly needed help, kill those bastards who didn't shrink from any crime, and uphold the moral bottom line in his heart. Sir Mage, please forgive us this time. We won't dare to do it again. One of the youths finally couldn't bear the immense pressure and knelt on the ground, begging bitterly. That's right. We were just blinded by the ritual. Just let us go this time. I still have a mother who's over 50 years old to feed. Please have mercy. With one of them taking the lead, the other youths followed suit and knelt on the ground. Perhaps if it were someone else, they would have just let it go. However, Andre was different. He came from the era of information explosion and understood one thing. If someone didn't get punished after committing a crime, that person would very likely get lucky. Not only would they not turn over a new leaf in the future, but they would also become worse. They would slowly upgrade from a petty criminal to a true demon who killed without batting an eyelid. Without any hesitation, the flashing electric arc in his hand suddenly shot out, instantly hitting the first guy who knelt down and begged for mercy. The strong electric shock directly made his heart stop beating. His whole body fell to the ground, and his skin was a little purple, emitting a burnt smell. Target hit. Tremor shock dealt 5 damage to Antonio. Target's HP has reached 0. Death. Obtained 5 EXP. For a profession with a strong vitality, the rank 0 arcane spell Tremor Shock would at most cause the body to twitch for a few seconds. It wasn't fatal at all, but ordinary people couldn't do it. Most of their vitality was about the same as Andre's before he became a mage. In terms of statistics, they only had about 1 to 4 HP. They couldn't withstand the power of a rank 0 spell at all. In the blink of an eye, another person had been killed. Andre still maintained a cold expression as he issued an ultimatum. Within the count of 10, either you're killed by me, or you're cut off by yourself. Don't make me repeat it a 3rd time. 10, 9, 8. He didn't give anyone time to think, and used the countdown to force the other party to accept the punishment. Damn it, I knew there would be retribution sooner or later. A slightly plump youth cursed as he pulled out a dagger from his waist. He gritted his teeth and stamped his feet. A cold light flashed, and a bloody lump of rotten flesh was cut off. Ah! The indescribable pain caused him to let out a heart-wrenching scream. Dark red blood gushed out like a fountain, flowing all over the ground. Glancing at the plump youth who was in so much pain, Andre stopped the countdown and nodded with satisfaction. He then looked at the other 3 people. He has made the right choice and can continue to live. Now it's your turn. Humans were a very complicated animal. In most cases, as long as they could continue to live, no one would be willing to die. Thus, the youths pulled out the daggers they carried with them, took off their pants, and cut off their manhood. For a moment, screams and wails filled the air of the slums. Even the guards on duty were alarmed. They rushed into the house to see what was going on. But when they saw the badge on the youth's chest, they instantly shivered. One of the men who looked like the captain bowed respectfully and asked carefully, "Respected Mr. Mage, may I ask if these hooligans have offended you?" "Yes, they tried to use violence against my apprentice, so I taught them a lesson." "Is there a problem?" Andre asked with a cold face. Ever since he heard from Alexia about the greedy and corrupt behavior of the city guards, he did not have a good impression of these people, so he did not give them a good face. The captain was frightened by the cold eyes. He quickly waved his hand and explained, "Of course there's no problem. These hooligans deserve to die 1,000 times. I'll send them to the prison immediately. They will all be hanged tomorrow morning." As an old ruffian, he knew that the members of the Mage Association had legal immunity. Not to mention killing a few hooligans. Even if the whole street was blown up, it would not be his turn to do anything. It was better to avoid trouble. After all, it was just hanging a few insignificant people. No need. I've already punished them. You just need to stop their bleeding and lock them in the prison for 2 days. Also, take these 2 corpses away, Andre ordered with an extremely impatient tone. He was very clear that corruption and corruption were unavoidable under any system. The more prosperous a place was, the more so it was. However, he still could not help but feel disgusted because the corruption in Lincoln City had exceeded a certain limit. The entire city was emitting a rotten smell. No problem. We'll do as you say. The captain did not dare to offend this youth who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old. He quickly ordered his subordinates to clean up the corpses. It did not take long for the messy hall to be cleaned up. Finally, he respectfully bowed and disappeared without a trace with everyone. Chapter 53. After watching those annoying guys leave, Andre finally had the time to look at the young woman who was sitting on the ground and crying. It had to be said that this woman, named Elsa, was quite beautiful. She had a fair and slender neck, well-defined facial features, and big blue eyes like a little loli's. Her skirt was torn apart, revealing her smooth calves and white toes. In particular, her slightly sorrowful eyes made people want to protect or ravage her. No wonder she was targeted by a group of hooligans. Even Andre, who had always had strong self-control, was stunned by her beauty, let alone a group of hot-blooded young men. "Mom, don't cry. Tell me, where's my brother?" "Uncle Jason said he's dead." "Is that true?" Beverly asked anxiously as she held her mother's hand. Her eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and she looked like she was going to cry at any time. Hearing her daughter's question, the young mother cried even harder. Tears flowed down her face uncontrollably. After a while, she nodded her head while suppressing her grief. "Baby, I'm useless. Your brother didn't even survive a winter before he coughed up blood and died." Boo-hoo. Obviously, for a woman to lose her husband at such a young age, and then lose her son before the age of 30, such a fate could be said to be extremely tragic. There was not the slightest bit of hope in life, just like the sky at this moment, completely shrouded in darkness. Andre didn't know what had supported her to live until now. Perhaps women were born with greater endurance than men, or perhaps she still missed her only daughter. In short, she was very admirable. Sometimes, living required more courage than dying. Only warriors who truly dared to face a bleak life could persevere. Perhaps they were not as respected as those heroes who died a spectacular death, but they shouldered the responsibility at the most critical moment, instead of choosing an easier death. After confirming the bad news, Beverly was surprisingly quiet. She didn't burst into tears as expected to vent the sadness in her heart. Instead, she wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and comforted her mother. She looked like a well-behaved young girl. With her 15 points of intelligence, she naturally understood that her grieving mother needed to be understood and comforted at this time. Otherwise, it was very likely that she would lose her life. Looking at the beautiful mother and daughter hugging each other and comforting each other, Andre couldn't help but sigh at how hard life was for ordinary people in this world. Heavy taxes, bad law and order, diseases that could kill at any time and place, food that was hard to swallow, and countless monsters and alien races in the wild that would attack the human world every few years back when he was still living in Lonely Mountain Town. He had already gotten used to the parting of life and death, especially during the winter. She slammed the door with a bang and covered her chest to feel her heart beating violently. Although she was already a mother of 2, she still felt a little shy. Of course, there was also a little excitement and expectation in her shyness. Even she didn't know why. Beverly, who knew that she had made a big mistake, shrunk her neck and quietly hid behind the young man. She was afraid that her mother would come back and spank her after changing her size. Looking at the girl's clever eyes, Andre couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. "Beverly, if I were you, I wouldn't hide. I would apologize immediately. Stand up and take responsibility for your mistakes. Otherwise, the consequences will only get worse. But Mother will definitely beat me if I go up now. Won't it be fine if I hide for a while and wait for her anger to subside? Beverly retorted, unconvinced. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.